To pass this elite academy entrance exam, candidates just need to leave a single scratch on this indestructible testing stone. But the relic is so tough that even the strongest students get blasted backward just trying to dent it. So when this kid steps up barehanded, the examiners and the crowd fully expect him to shatter his own arm. Meet Zeke, the talentless joke of his famous family. Yet, as he faces the relic, he looks completely calm. Instead of bracing for failure, he unleashes a massive surge of inner energy. He drives a heavy punch straight into the rock, triggering a shockwave that completely obliterates it into dust. The entire arena goes dead silent. The examiners are absolutely stunned, realizing he has the raw physical power of an advanced master. Zeke just laughs off his torn sleeve, leaving the crowd to stare at the wreckage. But how did the family joke ace this? Turns out, Zeke is the reincarnation of the absolute strongest martial artist. Long before he was known as a failure, Gilfus Eldragon was a man who spent his entire life obsessing over the absolute peak of martial arts. To overcome the limits of a human lifespan, he tracked down an ancient legend of a golden fruit that promised the power of immortality. After a brutal battle with a divine dragon, he finally claimed the prize he had been searching for his entire life. He ate the fruit and survived. But even then, he knew his journey toward the ultimate heights was far from over. He became hailed as the world's strongest warrior, but time eventually caught up to the legend. Decades later, the dying master found himself old and withered, surrounded by his mourning family and his son. He tells his family not to show such weak faces, accepting that his time has finally come to an end. Despite achieving everything a warrior could dream of, he closes his eyes with one final regret. He never reached the ultimate heights of combat, and with that thought, the world's strongest man passed away. But instead of eternal peace, he wakes up in a familiar room with a body that feels impossibly light and small. Looking at his tiny hands, he realizes he has been reborn as an infant named Zeke within his own family's annex. Zeke quickly pieces together the truth that golden fruit didn't grant him immortality, but the chance to live again through reincarnation. He never expected such incredible luck, realizing he can finally continue his pursuit of martial perfection in this new life. Our boy observes the other infants in the room, wondering why so many babies have been gathered in this secluded annex. The family maids enter with a terrifying test subject, using a goblin to check the potency of a mysterious red liquid. They begin feeding the diluted substance to the infants, unaware that Zeke can sense the overwhelming power it contains. He recognizes the liquid as ancient dragon blood, a substance so volatile that it should be lethal for a normal baby. While the other children instinctively reject the burning liquid, he realizes this is his first real opportunity to grow. If he can absorb all this source power, he might rebuild his foundation and even surpass his previous star level. Instead of spitting it out, he begins to absorb every drop, determined to reach the pinnacle and prove nobody should underestimate him. Zeke isn't an ordinary baby, and he has no intention of letting this brutal trial break his spirit. He forces his tiny body to absorb every drop of the ancient dragon's blood, determined to reach heights he never could in his past life. As the liquid flows through him, the immense source power of a legendary dragon begins to take root in his veins. Against all odds, the infant successfully survives the ritual and begins his new journey in this unfamiliar era. Exhausted from the ordeal, our hero finally drifts into a deep sleep while the years begin to slip away outside his isolated home. 7 years pass, and the once helpless infant has grown into a disciplined and athletic young boy. Living in isolation, he spends every waking moment pushing his physical limits through a brutal and repetitive training regimen. Thanks to the dragon's blood and his own tireless dedication, the boy has developed a physique far beyond his young age. He understands that while all living things possess source power, the ritual he survived gave him a massive head start over ordinary humans. By combining the dragon's blood with the memories of his past life, Zeke has undergone a transformation that surprises even himself. However, he remains deeply frustrated that his current progress has only allowed him to reach the 1-star level so far. In this world, strength is measured by stars generated within the body, and Zeke once stood at the unprecedented peak of 10. Life as an illegitimate child of the Eldragon family is lonely, especially with a deceased mother and a father who has never visited. The kid realizes he has been reborn into an era defined by extreme survival of the fittest, where only the strong are tolerated. Only those who survive the dangerous dragon trial are deemed worthy of receiving a true education as family warriors. Despite his success, no instructor has ever come to teach him, leaving Zeke to rely entirely on his own skills and intuition. When he questions the maids about his lack of training, they simply ignore his curiosity with cold and rehearsed answers. Even though the servants are actually skilled practitioners themselves, they are strictly ordered to only provide for his basic daily needs. Tired of the neglect, our boy heads into the surrounding forest to continue his training in private. He even forces himself to consume poisonous plants, treating the disgusting taste as just another form of endurance training. Zeke quickly notices a constant gaze following him, but he decides to keep moving until the hidden stalker reveals themselves. Suddenly, a massive and aggressive beast known as an anger boar emerges from the dense foliage. The creature is surrounded by a strange black mist that Zeke notes didn't exist in the world 1,000 years ago. Without warning, the powerful monster charges forward to crush the small interloper in its path. Instead of fleeing, the kid welcomes the challenge with a grin, seeing the beast as the perfect test for his current power. With a single effortless strike, Zeke completely destroys the boar and marvels at the quality of his current source power. He begins to grow weary of this quiet life and starts considering a journey to see the wider world for himself. Nearby, a hidden captain from the main family watches in shock, realizing that the boy is far more abnormal than anyone suspected. Zeke's peace is finally broken when several highly skilled fighters suddenly arrive at his remote home in the countryside. He senses no immediate hostility from the group, so he steps out to demand why such powerful warriors have come looking for him. The lead escort explains that they have come to retrieve him for a mandatory martial arts examination by the main Eldragan family. Bro is stunned by the sudden news, especially since he hasn't been taught a single thing during his entire childhood in isolation. Zeke finally returns to the main Eldragon family estate, having been summoned for a mandatory entry examination. He is immediately ordered to change into the proper student uniform. Over the last millennium, the family established an institution called the Dragon's Nest. Every descendant is expected to undergo standardized training here, starting at the age of 7. A polite, blue-haired boy approaches our hero. Zeke learns his name is Rangus and notes that the kid is far more perceptive than he looks. Their meeting is brief, as Zeke finds himself wondering what exactly the examiners have in store for them. Rangus is shocked to learn that Zeke has arrived without any prior knowledge of the curriculum or the testing procedures. The peaceful moment is cut short by a loudmouthed youth named Retin. He immediately starts bullying the smaller boy, calling him a weakling because of his father's low rank. Retin insists that the son of a pseudo-dragon doesn't belong at the academy. He taunts the boy, suggesting he go back home before he gets himself hurt. Zeke listens to the hierarchy explanation with boredom. He finally speaks up, asking the bully how he can judge someone's strength before they've even had a chance to try. When Retin demands to know who is talking, Zeke points out that Rangus is likely much stronger than any of them. The suggestion causes the bullies to fume with rage. A stern examiner suddenly calls for attention, announcing that the testing will officially begin. Each applicant is assigned a number and told to register for the first phase. Rangus warns that the upcoming task is dangerous and suggests that withdrawing might be safer. Zeke just laughs it off, stating that someone of his level couldn't quit now. The official task is revealed to be deceptively simple. To pass, a student must merely leave a single scratch on a massive boulder placed in the center of the field. Zeke finds the requirement surprisingly anticlimactic. After enduring the lethal dragon trial as an infant, a simple test of strength feels like child's play to him. The first few applicants rush forward with confidence, but they are quickly sent flying. Many fail to even leave a mark, resulting in an immediate disqualification from the academy. Rangus explains that the target is a regeneration stone. This rare material reflects brute force back at the attacker and instantly heals any minor damage it sustains. Zeke realizes that the quality of one's martial arts is irrelevant here. The only way to scratch the stone is by properly circulating internal power throughout the entire body. As the failures continue to pile up, Zeke's number is finally called. He steps toward the testing ground while telling his new friend to relax and watch the show. Our boy approaches the boulder with a confident stride. He looks over the collection of weapons and prepares to show these examiners what a true master can do. Zeke confidently tells the examiner that he doesn't need a weapon because his bare fist will be more than enough to pass the test. The surrounding applicants watch him in total disbelief, certain that the kid is about to shatter his hand against the enchanted rock. Even Rangus is overcome with worry, terrified that his new friend is about to lose his entire arm from the force of the impact. Our guy stares down the massive boulder, noting that this specialized mineral is another product of 1,000 years of human progress. He acknowledges how much he still doesn't understand about this current era, but it doesn't dampen his excitement for the challenge. Rangus tries to scream out for him to stop, but the determination in the boy's eyes makes it impossible to intervene. The timid boy can only watch with his heart in his throat as the protagonist begins to channel his internal energy. Zeke focuses his power and prepares to unleash the first form of his own legendary combat style from his previous life. A massive burst strike connects directly with the center of the stone, sending a violent shockwave rippling through the entire arena. The impact is so heavy that dust and debris fly everywhere, leaving the spectators and the examiner in a state of shock. Everyone present freezes in complete silence, unable to comprehend the sheer amount of power that the small child just displayed. Despite the destruction, the reincarnated master feels that his young body still isn't trained well enough for a perfect execution. As the dust finally settles, the indestructible boulder is nowhere to be seen, replaced by a massive pile of broken rubble. The examiner realizes that the impossible has happened, and even the local bullies are left speechless by the absolute destruction. A talented blonde swordswoman watches the scene with intense interest while Rangus stands by with his jaw on the floor. The official notes that making a stone like that disappear usually requires the strength of a 4-star warrior or higher. He wonders if this illegitimate child really possesses the head's bloodline, as the technique used seemed oddly familiar to him. Zeke casually asks for his results and is officially passed, becoming the first applicant to destroy the target instead of scratching it. He is handed a glowing green vial as a reward for his performance, though he has no idea what the liquid is for. Our boy finds the modern examiners a bit too prickly and impatient, but he decides to keep his thoughts to himself. Rangus is the first to rush over and celebrate the success, still amazed that his friend managed to shatter the stone. After learning that his reward is just a standard healing potion, the protagonist realizes how much alchemy has advanced in his absence. He is stunned by the high quality of the medicinal liquid, sensing that it contains a high concentration of pure source power. In the old world medicine, this potent was considered a legendary spirit treasure that only appeared once in 100 years. He is truly impressed that a family in this era can hand out such high-grade medicine as a simple reward for an exam. While Rangus is shocked by how quickly his friend's minor scrapes are healing, Zeke is busy analyzing the wisdom of humanity. He acknowledges that over the last 10 centuries, humans have actually grown smarter and more efficient in their use of natural resources. Our boy declares that he will reach the top of this world, ignoring the arrogant glares of the rivals sitting in the stands. It is finally time for Rangus to take the stage, but the timid kid is shaking so much he can barely stand. Zeke watches from the sidelines, curious to see how his new companion will handle the pressure of the main event. The boy swings his heavy sword with everything he has, but the enchanted stone remains completely unmarked by his unrefined strike. Every attempt ends in the same total failure, and the crowd begins to whisper as the pressure starts to break his spirit. Rangus collapses in despair, realizing that he is about to fail the exam and let down everyone who believed in him. The bullies from earlier start laughing and mockery fills the arena as they take every chance to kick him while he's down. Retin continues to belittle him in front of the entire crowd, laughing at the idea that such a weakling could ever become a warrior. With only one attempt remaining, the examiner asks if he's ready to give up and leave the academy for good. Zeke suddenly interrupts the verbal abuse, asking Rangus why he's insisting on using a weapon that clearly doesn't fit his natural movements. He points out that no matter how hard he tries, a sword will never work for him because his talent lies elsewhere. The bullies mock the suggestion, claiming that his father only ever taught him swordsmanship and that a spear would be even worse. Our boy confirms with the examiner that switching gear is perfectly legal before giving his companion a final push to choose correctly. He challenges the kid to decide if he's going to listen to his own heart or keep failing because of someone else's expectations. Trusting the strength he saw in his new friend, Rangus stands back up and decides to gamble his entire life on the spear. For years, Rangus watched his father suffer as an outcast, branded a failure by the very family he was supposed to lead. But today, the boy is determined to prove that his heritage isn't a lie, choosing to stake everything on one final attempt. He knows that repeating his past mistakes with a sword will lead to failure, so he decides to trust Zeke's unconventional guidance. Zeke encourages him to forget everything and focus purely on a single straight thrust using the unfamiliar spear. Stepping forward, Rangus ignores the logic of his doubts and chooses to believe in the potential his friend saw within him. As he grips the weapon, a hidden power begins to surge through his body, much stronger than anything he felt with a blade. The local bully laughs at the desperate change in tactics, but his mockery dies instantly as the spear feels like a natural extension of the boy's arm. With a thunderous impact, the spear doesn't just scratch the regeneration stone, it pierces straight through, leaving the examiners in complete shock. Rangus stands dazed by his own achievement, hardly able to comprehend that he has actually passed the impossible entrance exam. Zeke celebrates his friend's success, even as the frustrated bullies try to dismiss the incredible feat as nothing more than a fluke. With the testing officially over, the crowd of hopeful candidates is gathered for the formal academy entrance ceremony. Rangus explains that the leadership of the Eldragon family will soon appear to deliver their traditional congratulatory speeches. Zeke watches as a cold, imposing figure with silver hair takes the stage, though the boy is less than impressed by the man's gloomy expression. Using his sharp instincts, the protagonist evaluates the gathered officers, noting the high concentration of master-level fighters among the clan's ranks. He identifies the figurehead as Balza Eldragan, an 8-star master who commands respect through sheer overwhelming force. The boy feels a natural sense of repulsion toward the man despite the realization that this powerful leader is technically his biological father. Balza calls for silence, and his voice carries a spiritual weight that begins to physically overwhelm the less experienced children in the crowd. While the others struggle to breathe under the crushing pressure, Zeke remains unfazed, noticing a strange and immense hatred radiating from his father. Suddenly, a boisterous officer interrupts the tense mood, leaping forward with a hearty laugh to greet the new recruits in a much more casual manner. This unexpected energy dispels the suffocating atmosphere, allowing the staff to proceed with announcing the various dormitory assignments. The students are split into 4 distinct halls, each representing a different quadrant of the academy's massive campus. Zeke is assigned to the East Hall and bids a brief farewell to Rangus before heading off to find his new living quarters. Wandering through the vast estate, he can't help but feel a sense of nostalgia, realizing how much has changed over the last 1,000 years. He swings the door to his new room open with a grin, only to find that his assigned roommate is a very familiar face. Zeke is pleasantly surprised to find that his new roommate is Ranjis. Having a familiar friend in the academy dorms makes the transition much easier for both of them. Ranjis warns him that they should get some rest as the actual training is scheduled to begin first thing tomorrow morning. Our boy decides that staying with the Eldragon family for a while might be useful to learn how the world has changed over a millennium. A full month passes as the recruits settle into the rigid routine of the Dragon's Nest Academy. The instructor explains that they will be learning the Dragon's Breath, a secret breathing technique passed down through the family line. He notes that a girl named Laika is already showing elite potential, but the examiners are more confused by Zeke's strange and efficient methods. Zeke analyzes the technique and realizes it is just a method for taking in and circulating atmospheric energy to enhance one's body. He quickly discovers that this supposed family secret is actually just a simplified version of his own ancient Dragon King's breath technique. Finding the downgrade amusing, he continues to push himself with heavy weights while the other students struggle to keep up. During lunch, Ranjis is completely exhausted, but Zeke mocks him for having such pathetic stamina compared to his own. Their meal is interrupted when a blonde girl walks up and commends Zeke for his impressive performance in the training grounds. A panicked Ranjis identifies her as Laika Eldragon, a high-ranking head candidate who usually doesn't associate with common students. Zeke isn't bothered at all, revealing that he is also the head's son, even if he is considered illegitimate. Laika is intrigued by how a boy with no resources or backing could be strong enough to shatter a regeneration stone barehanded. She offers to become his backer if he agrees to serve as her personal subordinate and help her secure the position of family head. She thinks an illegitimate child would jump at the chance to have powerful allies, but Zeke gives her a flat rejection. Bro has zero interest in boring family politics and refuses to bow down to anyone else's authority. He declares that he will never serve a master because he is already the strongest person in the room. Laika is furious at his sheer arrogance and decides she will force him to submit by challenging him to a formal fight. The news of a duel between the prodigy and the mysterious newcomer spreads through the halls like wildfire. Crowds begin to gather at the arena, curious to see who would dare to stand up against a member of the elite Typhona family. Ranjis tries to explain that Laika mastered the legendary lightning greatsword arts at just 7 years old, but Zeke barely listens. In fact, the idea of facing such a talented opponent only makes the reincarnated master more excited for the match. When someone challenges him to a fight, our guy simply doesn't know how to run away. They arrive at the training ground where a determined Laika is already waiting for him with her massive blade drawn. Zeke asks the blonde girl if she's finally done with her idle chatter, completely ignoring Rangis's frantic pleas for him to be careful. She explains that her ultimate goal is to become the head of the family, and to do that she must first force him into submission. Our boy admits he's completely unaware of the political situation within his own household, which leaves the heiress absolutely stunned by his ignorance. She lists out the 5 different candidates currently competing for the top position, each representing one of the 4 prestigious branches of their clan. While Zeke finds the family drama far too complicated to care about, Laika is determined to solidify her base of power by defeating him. With no intention of letting him escape, she draws her heavy training sword and prepares to strike with everything she has. The girl launches into a relentless offensive, swinging her massive blade with incredible force while dust kicks up from the sheer intensity of her movements. Her control over her internal energy is precise as her attacks keep getting faster, yet she remains unable to land a single solid hit on him. Zeke effortlessly maneuvers through her flurry of strikes, noting how her speed is impressive for an heir, but still not quite enough to reach him. To her shock, the girl finds herself swinging at empty air, frustrated that she can't touch her opponent despite her training and superior status. Ranjis watches the spectacle in pure awe while the protagonist tells Laika to stop overthinking and focus entirely on the match in front of her. Zeke stops purely dodging and readies himself to deliver a counteroffensive, moving with a speed that defies his low rank. He steps into her guard and prepares to land a decisive blow, declaring that his focus is the only reason he can attack so freely. He connects with a powerful strike that forces a pained grunt from the heiress, leaving her stunned by the weight of his physical strength. The observing students can't believe their eyes as the high-ranking prodigy misses her mark and takes a direct hit from a mere commoner. Our guy points out that although she's faster than most, her status as a 1-star warrior still makes her movements predictable to his experienced eyes. He explains that reading an opponent's breathing and muscle shifts is a basic skill earned through years of combat that she has yet to master. Enraged by his lecture, the girl refuses to accept the gap in their ability and charges forward with a renewed sense of desperation. The two clash once more in the center of the arena, their training weapons echoing with the force of their mutual determination to win. As the dust settles, the crowd begins to whisper in shock, wondering if the impossible has happened and their champion has truly been defeated. Ranjis is ready to celebrate the victory, but Zeke keeps his guard up, knowing his opponent is far from being finished with this fight. He observes that the girl managed to harden her core with energy just in time to mitigate the damage from his previous heavy blow. She tells Ranjis to step back for his own safety, while Zeke notices a strange, powerful pressure beginning to build deep within her. A blinding white light suddenly begins to emanate from her body, signaling that she has finally broken through her limits during the heat of battle. This is the manifestation of a 2-star aura, a state where a warrior can project their internal energy outside their body to enhance their martial arts. The girl launches herself forward with a sudden burst of incredible speed, her massive blade glowing with the intensity of her newly awakened power. Although our boy manages to dodge the direct impact, the sheer pressure of her aura leaves a small cut on his face for the first time. She declares that the match is far from over now, that she can finally unleash the true potential of her family's legendary sword style. As she prepares to unleash her family's unique lightning technique, Zeke is filled with anticipation at the thought of facing a style he has never seen before. This is exactly the kind of thrill he was hoping for, and he welcomes her final challenge with open arms and pure joy. Laika unleashes the full might of her greatsword, her movements becoming a blur of electric energy. Zeke is genuinely taken aback by the sudden shift in her power, but his surprise quickly turns into a thrill. The blonde swordswoman notices his wide grin and realizes that her opponent is having the time of his life. Even our guy admits that this level of lightning is going to be difficult to handle without a plan. From the sidelines, Rain just watches in awe, realizing how much the manifestation of a second star can change a battle. While his opponent strikes, Zeke notes that the manifesting aura makes her motions simple to track, but their impact is devastating. He could launch a counterattack immediately, but his curiosity about this mysterious power keeps him on the defensive. Laika grows frustrated with his relaxed attitude and resolves to wipe the smile off his face once and for all. She moves with the speed of a thunderbolt, coming down with a massive horizontal slash. The strike lands with incredible force, kicking up a massive cloud of dust across the training grounds. As the smoke clears, the spectators gasp to see that the boy has taken the hit head-on. Despite the damage, the reincarnated master is still standing, looking more excited than ever. Laika doesn't let up, swinging her massive blade back around for another lightning-charged strike. Rangus shouts for her to stop, fearing that his friend can't take much more of this punishment. But the swordswoman refuses, arguing that holding back now would be the ultimate insult to a proud Eldragon. She offers him a chance to surrender and serve under her. Seeing that he is already in terrible shape, Zeke just smiles through his injuries, showing no intention of backing down from the challenge. Accepting his defiance, she gathers her full power for a secret art called Heaven's Thunder. A pillar of light descends as the attack connects, appearing to swallow the boy whole. However, a familiar voice rings out from the dust, declaring that the match is over. The dust settles to reveal Zeke standing perfectly upright, his clothes torn but his spirit unbroken. Laika looks on in total disbelief, unable to fathom how he survived her strongest technique. Her shock turns to terror as she realizes that the boy is now cladding himself in his own lightning aura. When she demands to know how he did it, our guy just smirks and says he doesn't quite understand it himself. He steps forward, the ground cracking under the sheer pressure of his newly awakened star. He explains that he took her attacks on purpose just to figure out the mechanics of her power. Using his Dragon King's breath, he was able to absorb her energy and accumulate it within his own body. Before he knew it, the electricity was his to manipulate as he pleased. He wonders aloud if her entire clan shares this unique constitution that allows their energy to carry lightning properties. Regardless of the reason, Bro is delighted, calling the duel an excellent piece of training. Thanks to her intensity, he has finally broken through to the 2-star level. Lightning dances across his hands as he prepares to show her what he can do with this new power. Our boy declares that the match is far from over as he settles into a combat stance. The sudden surge of power affects all his muscles and nerves, and he needs a moment to adjust to his sharpened senses. Rangus can barely track the fight anymore, noticing that Laika's lightning slashes are no longer hitting their target. When she accuses him of mocking her, he calmly clarifies that he truly considers her a serious threat. They clash again, the impact of their blades sending shockwaves through the air. Zeke decides it's time to wrap things up and wonders what kind of new technique he should create on the fly. Laika is baffled by the idea that someone can just invent high-level martial arts in the middle of a duel. Her realization comes too late as she sees him charging his energy into a single point. He calls the new move Lightning Peak, unleashing a concentrated burst that completely shatters her defense. The match is called and the arena falls silent in the wake of the incredible display. Zeke stands over his fallen opponent, enthusiastically praising her for such an interesting fight. Laika lies on the ground, struggling to process her first major defeat. She thinks of her goal to become the family head, and her need to defeat her brothers to reach the top. Zeke doesn't seem to notice her internal crisis, clearly enjoying the thrill of learning something new. He reaches out a hand and cheerfully invites her to spar with him again in the near future. A flustered Laika can only stare back, completely overwhelmed by her roommate's monstrous talent. After their public duel, Zeke cheerfully asks the exhausted girl for a rematch, already looking forward to their next encounter. Elsewhere, the formidable head of the family, Balza Eldragon, stands in a dark domain while showcasing a terrifying display of his destructive power. A nervous instructor arrives to report that the young prodigy Laika has reached the 2-star level, but the news earns only indifference from the patriarch. The instructor insists that such talent is legendary for her age, yet Balza remains cold, stating that talent alone is completely meaningless. The real shock comes when the instructor reveals that the girl was defeated in a match. Balza is stunned to learn that the victor was none other than Zeke. Hearing the name, The family head reflects on the boy's mother and the combat talent he may have inherited from her bloodline. Intrigued by this development, the patriarch decides to initiate the first official trial immediately, despite his aide's concerns that the students aren't ready. He asserts that death visits everyone equally, and those who cannot survive the coming ordeal have no right to carry the Eldragon name. He orders a strict officer to monitor the situation closely. The mysterious strength of his illegitimate son has finally caught his attention. The following day, Zeke is found in the training field. He casually hauls massive boulders and weights while his peers struggle with basic exercises. As he analyzes the school's combat arts, he realizes they are merely simplified body enhancements. Rangius approaches him, wondering when the boy will actually start training. With a casual smile, our guy reveals that he mastered the technique moments after learning it, leaving his roommate in complete disbelief. He notices the timid boy's energy flow is incorrect and steps in to fix it. With a light touch, he forces the source power into the proper channels. The change is immediate, and the student feels a surge of strength he has never known before. He can hardly believe his friend's effortless expertise. While the others find these arts complex, Zeke views them as basic and stable compared to his own world-slaying techniques from his previous life. He reflects on the overwhelming destructive power he once possessed. For now, he is content to keep training his physical body as he always has. Deeply moved by the help, Rangius begs the boy to continue instructing him, desperate to gain even a small amount of real strength. Zeke agrees, noting that the boy is worth teaching. Suddenly, the lightning swordswoman appears and asks if she can join their training session as well. The prodigy admits that her pride was crushed in their last match. She resolves to get strong enough to surpass her brothers and even Zeke himself. Laika worries that training a future rival for the family head position might be a mistake, but Rangius reminds her that our boy is also the head's son. Zeke asks if her body is okay, noting that a potion must have healed the severe injuries she took during their intense duel. While the hero is impressed by modern medicine, Rangius is just happy to see his friend recovered and ready to move forward. The blue-haired boy asks if he can also be trained, and Zeke cheerfully agrees to help anyone who has a genuine desire to get stronger. He reminds Laika that since they are the same age, she shouldn't be so formal, but the girl remains focused on her goal. Our guy asks why she is so obsessed with the position, leading Laika to reveal her personal struggle with her family's dark side. She explains that if she fails to become the head, her only fate is to be sold off in a political marriage to a complete stranger. The blonde girl notes that their special dragon blood makes her branch family valuable, and her lineage is treated more like a resource than a person. Hearing this, Zeke is disgusted by the family's outdated traditions and vows to crush any fool who treats people like objects. Their moment of resolve is interrupted by the arrival of a high-ranking officer who has come to oversee the first trial. The academy instructor commands the students to show respect to their new teacher, who has a terrifyingly busy schedule. Before anyone can react, a red-haired woman vanishes and reappears behind Laika, complimenting the girl's sharp and focused movements. While she praises the quality of the candidate's aura, Zeke realizes this officer has absolutely no presence, making her a master of stealth. The instructor introduces herself as Freya Fawinkic, a 6-star member of the elite Black Dragon Corps who serves under the current family head. Freya greets the group with a smile, though her status as an officer in the head's direct unit leaves the common students trembling. She addresses our guide directly as Lord Zeke, and she is amused to see that the boy isn't the least bit surprised by her sudden appearance. However, she senses that the child possesses an interesting technique, raising her curiosity about what he is truly capable of. The red-haired officer analyzes Zeke's energy and is baffled to see it flowing through his lower body in a pattern she has never encountered before. While the other students are starstruck by the presence of a legend from the Tempest Wind unit, Laika wonders why such a legend is teaching children. The new teacher announces a sudden test where every student must survive for 1 month on the deadly Poison Dragon Mountain. She produces a glowing gem, explaining that this crystal orb is their ticket to remaining in the academy if they can keep it safe. The name brings back memories for Zeke, as the mountain is a treacherous region filled with diverse and extremely lethal creatures. While ordinary people would die from just touching the grass, our boy remembers using the toxic landscape for training in his previous life. To pass, the kids must carry a crystal orb and protect it, as losing the item results in an immediate expulsion from the academy. When Laika mentions the monsters, the officer coldly explains that they will have to hunt the beasts if they want to eat and survive. They are given 5 days to choose and master a basic weapon art, which should give them at least a small chance against the predators. The officer warns them that Eldragon is a place where the weak are culled, and those who fail the test will likely perish in the poison. Zeke looks up at the sky, wondering if the current era of his family is even more ruthless than the one he helped build. Our boy advises Rangius to choose the spear manual, as he already showed great potential with the weapon during the entrance exams. While Laika initially reaches for a greatsword book, Zeke stops her and tells her to pick up axe arts instead to improve her power. He explains that the weight of the axe will supplement her current fighting style, and the blonde girl chooses to trust his insight completely. Though she was skeptical, Laika accepts the new weapon manual, showing how much respect she has gained for our hero's knowledge. Freya tells the students to memorize their books like their lives depend on it, as the deadline for the trial is fast approaching. She adds one final twist to the test. The upperclassmen from the East Hall will be actively hunting the students to steal their orbs. Rangus is terrified of being attacked by seniors, especially since even the weakest of them are at least one-star martial artists. Our guy suggests that the students should form small parties to prepare for the ambush, as teamwork is the only way for the average kid to survive. However, Zeke intends to enter the mountain alone, leaving his friends to wonder why he is so excited to face the danger without help. The month of training and preparation finally ends, and the students gather their gear as the brutal survival test officially begins. The day of the survival test has finally arrived, though the timid spearman still feels a wave of insecurity about his own lack of rank. He is joined by two new commoner allies, Celine and Raymond, who are both incredibly excited and a bit nervous to be part of the high-ranking prodigies squad. The lightning swordswoman reassures them of their value, and Rangus vows to do his absolute best to avoid becoming a burden to the team during the trial. Despite the obvious danger of the mountain, our boy makes the bold choice to face the month-long test entirely on his own, opting for total solitude. His friends are baffled by his total lack of nerves, but the hero recognizes that his peers are already among the most promising students in the hall. He tells them the test will be a breeze as long as they trust in their training, showing a level of confidence that others might mistake for arrogance. The instructor, Freya Feewinkik, officially commences the trial and explains that everyone must protect a special crystal orb for the next 30 days to pass. There is a catch, however, as students are allowed to steal orbs from one another, and upperclassmen will soon enter the area to act as hunters. A few older students already have their eyes on the freshmen, and as the signal finally rings out, the first years rush into the dangerous wilderness. While the main group coordinates their movements together, the protagonist departs on his own path, leaving his worried friends behind to face the trial in the woods. Freya finds the kid's casual attitude absolutely bizarre, wondering if he even understands the severity of the challenge he is about to undertake. The other instructors worry that the new students lack actual combat experience, but Freya is more concerned with the low quality of the local monsters. Though the mountain is full of poisonous creatures, she mentions that she has an even greater threat waiting to be released later in the test. With the rules established and the students scattered, the instructor looks forward to seeing how many of them will actually manage to keep their orbs. A small group of arrogant upperclassmen quickly tracks down our guy while he stands alone, laughing at the fact that he's just waiting in the open. The hero has been waiting for them to arrive, and the older students are momentarily confused by his cheerful and welcoming greeting. Their confusion turns to absolute terror when a projectile is suddenly fired at high speed, only for the boy to catch the sharp arrow midair with his bare hands. With a cold and menacing look in his eyes, the reincarnated martial god invites his new guests to stay and play with him for a while. Celine and Raymond coordinate their strikes to push back the forest monsters, working hard to keep the group safe during the first week of the survival test. Even the timid Rangus joins the fray with his spear, determined to contribute as they clear out the remaining threats and secure the immediate area. The group is in high spirits after the skirmish, admiring the massive pile of enemies that their leader managed to handle all by herself. Laika is genuinely impressed with how far they have come, noting that both Raymond and Celine have finally achieved the breakthrough to the 1-star level. While the others celebrate their success, Rangus can't help but feel frustrated by his own lack of a star despite the intense training he did with Zeke. As the sun begins to set over the mountain, the team starts heading back to their camp, only to realize that someone has already found their hidden base. An arrogant 2-star upperclassman steps out from the shadows, mocking the group of first years while demanding that they hand over their precious crystal orbs immediately. The older student reveals that he didn't come alone, as 3 1-star lackeys surround the team to ensure that even the prodigy Laika is completely overwhelmed. He orders his subordinates to seize the orbs by force, fully confident that their advantage in numbers and experience will lead to a very quick victory. Laika refuses to let them take anything, drawing her massive greatsword and commanding her teammates to stand their ground until she can finish her own duel. Rangus finds himself cornered by a faster opponent, his current lack of source power leaving him at a severe disadvantage against the senior student's aggressive sword style. In this moment of intense pressure, the boy remembers a conversation he had with our hero back at the academy regarding how to defeat much stronger enemies. The reincarnated martial god was characteristically blunt about the situation, explaining that a person without a star simply cannot hope to beat high-ranking masters in a fair fight. However, our boy noted that the gap between a first year and an upperclassman is small enough to be bridged if one knows how to exploit a single opening. The core of the strategy was to simply endure every single strike, waiting with absolute patience for the opponent to grow impatient and commit to a mistake. Rangus had questioned if he was even capable of holding out that long, but our guy insisted that survival was the only path to an eventual counterattack. Zeke reminded him to stop overthinking the results and instead trust in the basic spear fundamentals they had practiced, until his hands were raw and blistered. He didn't need to worry about creating an opportunity himself, but rather focus entirely on reacting when his enemy inevitably showed a moment of weakness. When that tiny gap finally presented itself, He just needed to commit everything to a single spear thrust that would end the battle in one clean motion. Back in the present, Rengus blocks a heavy barrage of strikes, focusing his mind entirely on maintaining his defense while the arrogant senior continues his reckless assault. The lackey grows increasingly frustrated by the stubborn resistance of the lower-class student, and his desire for a quick kill causes him to leave his side completely unprotected. Our boy's student strikes with perfect timing, driving his spear home and proving that the tactical advice from the former patriarch was exactly what he needed to win. Nearby, the two-star leader is stunned to see his subordinate defeated by a starless kid, unable to process how the power dynamic shifted so drastically against him. Laika explains that she practiced axe techniques to improve her destructive force before finishing the bully with a massive overhead swing that shatters his confidence and his guard. The battle ends as the leader collapses to the forest floor, and the lightning swordswoman quickly turns her attention back to her teammates to ensure their safety. Rangus nearly falls over from exhaustion, but he is overjoyed when his friends point out the glowing light of a star finally manifesting on his own chest. Now that the entire team has reached the same rank, Laika can't help but wonder if our guy is having even more fun hunting on his own. Deep in the forest, groups of seniors are running in absolute terror, having realized too late that they are being hunted by a monster they can't possibly hope to stop. In the deep woods, the designated prey has somehow become the predator as Zeke treats the entire survival test like a casual game. He leaves the older students screaming in absolute terror while he laughs at their weakness. He easily corners one of the boys who previously thought the first years would be easy targets for recruitment. Our guy is actually disappointed that none of these older students can offer him any kind of challenge. Even though he knows there are observers hidden in the thick foliage, he doesn't care about their presence at all. He decides to keep playing without holding back, since no one has stepped in to stop him. An observer watches the boy from a distance, stunned by the sheer difference in power between the grades. Realizing this situation is far beyond the expected parameters of the test, he knows he has to report back immediately. The scout rushes through the forest, desperate to reach the command center before anything else goes wrong. He finds Freya, the instructor overseeing the mountain trial, who is waiting for a routine update on the student casualties. While the 7-year-olds are gradually adapting to the harsh environment, the report on the upperclassmen is quite different. To Freya's confusion, she hears that the seniors are failing to accomplish their mission and are struggling. She wonders if some high-level monster has wandered onto the mountain, but the truth is much more concerning for the academy. The scout clarifies that Zeke is the one currently mowing down every senior he encounters. The Eldrigan soldiers can't believe a child could be this aggressive during a test meant to humble new recruits. Even for a genius, his combat prowess and savage efficiency are completely beyond anything they have ever seen. To the hardened soldiers watching the footage, he no longer looks like a student but something far more dangerous. They begin to whisper that the boy has transcended the realm of a mere prodigy and become a monster. Freya realizes that Zeke was never the prey in this scenario, but the alpha predator of the mountain. Coincidentally, a massive iron cage arrives at the camp, carrying a special test ordered by the family head himself. She prepares to release a 3-star level golem onto the mountain to see how the boy reacts to true pressure. She assures her subordinates that the construct has been adjusted to only target those with higher source power levels. This lethal addition to the trial comes directly from Balza Eldrigan, who wants to see his son's true strength. The massive construct is dropped into the forest as Freya watches with intense curiosity to see if he survives. Elsewhere on the mountain, Laika and her group continue their struggle to survive while protecting their orb. While the others worry about common monsters, the lightning swordswoman senses an ominous presence approaching them from the thick canopy. Before they can react, a massive impact shatters the nearby trees and shakes the very earth. A giant stone golem towers over the terrified students, blocking their path with its crushing weight as its glowing red eyes lock onto them. Deep in the forest, the reincarnated martial god is starting to get bored now that the academy instructors have finally stopped monitoring his training for the day. Suddenly, he senses a powerful aura vibrating through the air that feels like a dangerous 3-star level monster is lurking nearby. He wonders if some unknown creature has settled on this mountain during the 1,000 years he was gone from the world. Regardless of where it came from, our guy is just thrilled to finally have some fun again and immediately starts sprinting toward the source. Miles away, a frantic battle is already underway as the other students find themselves facing a threat they weren't prepared for. The rest of the group is desperately attacking a massive stone golem with everything they have, but their physical strikes aren't doing anything. Even their standard martial arts and weapons prove useless against the monster's enchanted hide, which seems to absorb every impact without taking damage. Laika steps in and activates her lightning aura, managing to finally crack the golem's outer shell as she realizes the sheer scale of the threat. She quickly understands that without 2-star power, her teammates won't be able to damage this thing at all, and will likely be killed. The lightning swordswoman tries to order a retreat to save her friends, but they stubbornly refuse to leave her side in the middle of a battle. She bluntly points out that they are currently a burden, since even her strongest aura only managed to leave a small scratch on the beast's arm. The commoners and rangies decide to act as support instead, vowing to keep the monster busy, so Laika has the perfect opening to strike it again. The team vows to fight with their leader at the center, believing that if they work together, they might actually have a chance to win. They coordinate their movements and prepare for one final push, centering their entire strategy around the offensive power of their most talented member. They charge into the fray once more, putting everything on the line to keep the stone giant distracted with rapid and continuous movements. Raymond charges forward with his shield to block a heavy strike from the massive golem, sacrificing himself to protect the rest of the team. The impact is brutal, sending the boy flying back with a heavy grunt as his shield barely holds up against the monster's overwhelming brute force. Celine and the spearmen dive in next, using their agility to distract the monster and keep its eyes off their ace while she charges her power. Laika leaps into the air and unleashes a devastating technique, calling down a massive pillar of lightning that strikes the golem with the force of heaven. The resulting explosion rocks the entire mountain, burying the golem in a sea of smoke and debris as the students watch the aftermath in silence. Having spent every last drop of her source power on that final attack, Laika struggles to stay on her feet and quickly checks on the injured Raymond. She thinks the battle is finally over, but her eyes widen in horror as a giant stone hand suddenly emerges from the cloud of dust. Before she can even think about moving, the golem grabs her and lifts her high into the air, its red eyes glowing with murderous intent. Our girl is completely trapped in its crushing grip and finds herself unable to summon enough energy to break free from the monster's stone fingers. The timid spearman charges forward in a desperate panic to save her, but the monster casually bats him away like he was nothing more than a fly. The others can only watch in absolute horror as their friend is squeezed by the stone giant, realizing they are completely powerless to stop it. Just as the situation looks completely hopeless, a familiar and much-needed presence suddenly enters the area and shifts the entire mood of the battlefield. Laika is dropped to the ground and gasps for air, wondering what in the world just happened to the monster's indestructible grip. Zeke casually drops onto the golem's massive shoulder with a wide grin, mocking the creature by calling it nothing more than a clumsy clay puppet. A little while earlier, our guy senses a familiar energy in the distance and realizes that Laika's group has encountered the massive golem before he could reach them. Even though he isn't quite as fast as he was in his prime, he knows he needs to hurry. He realizes his friends won't last long against a 3-star opponent. Remembering a basic movement technique from the family manual, he prepares a long-range approach by uprooting a nearby tree and gripping the trunk with his bare hands. He launches the massive tree into the air and hitches a ride, using his incredible strength to propel himself toward the battlefield at a staggering speed. The reincarnated master finds that these simplified modern movements are actually perfect for his current body's limitations, allowing him to navigate the forest with ease. He lands right in front of the group and greets them casually, seemingly oblivious to the fact that they were just on the verge of death. Laika frantically points out the massive monster, which turns out to be a golem that lacks a traditional life force, making it a very strange creature to analyze. The kid notes that the creature's shell is hard enough to require aura-clad strikes. However, he decides that simply chipping away at it would be far too boring for him. While his companions stare in disbelief at his complete lack of fear, the golem brings down a massive stone fist that shatters the earth around them. Zeke easily avoids the heavy blow and tells the others to stand back, sensing that things are about to get quite messy for anyone standing too close. After Rangus backs off, our guy delivers a powerful kick to the creature's leg to test the density of its rocky outer shell and see if it can be cracked. Now that he has confirmed the surface is solid, he decides to see if the monster's interior is just as sturdy, preparing to launch a specialized attack. He unleashes the Burst World technique, pouring pure source power directly into the creature to shatter its core from the inside out in a single explosive move. The massive golem crumbles into a pile of rubble, and the martial god lets out a cheer, genuinely enjoying the physical exercise after so long. The month-long test finally comes to a close, and while 70% of the class was weeded out by the harsh environment, many of the survivors reached the 1-star level. As the exhausted and battered students head back to the academy, our boy finds himself being escorted away for a very different and far more formal meeting. Freya warns him to show some respect when they meet the family head, clearly annoyed by the boy's complete lack of discipline and his blunt way of speaking. She explains that by hunting the upperclassmen, he caused an unprecedented mess that forced every single older student to retake their entire exam because they failed to collect orbs. Despite the intense warning, Zeke remains completely unfazed as he approaches the heavy wooden doors to face his father for the first time since the test began. As they walk through the castle's long corridors, Freya frantically warns the boy to drop his frivolous attitude before meeting the family's absolute authority. The officer officially announces their arrival and receives permission to enter the inner sanctum of the current head of the Eldragon family. They enter the massive office where the patriarch sits behind a grand desk, his presence filling the entire room with a heavy atmosphere. Balza immediately demands an explanation for Zeke's aggressive behavior and why he chose to hunt down his own upperclassmen during the test. Our boy casually points out that attacking others wasn't against the rules, so he simply spent his time as he pleased while following the conditions. Freya is horrified by his total lack of respect in front of the master head, fearing for the child's life. However, the patriarch merely observes the child with a piercing gaze, his eyes sharp as he evaluates the illegitimate son's resolve. A suffocating pressure fills the room as Balza tests his son's spirit, Yet the reincarnated martial master doesn't even blink. Zeke bluntly tells the man to stop the annoying threats and get to the point of why he was summoned to the main office. The patriarch is deeply disturbed by the reports of a mere child effortlessly taking down a high-level golem and demands to know the source of his power. With a confident smirk, the kid gives his standard answer, claiming there's no reason for his strength other than who he is. Despite the disrespect, Balza offers a reward for his performance, giving him a choice between the family treasury or access to the legendary hall. These restricted facilities hold legendary artifacts and forbidden books gathered by the family heads over 1,000 years. Accessing the upper floors is a rare honor reserved only for those who demonstrate truly excellent results. Our guy mocks the head for being stingy with the rewards, prompting a cold dismissal from the powerful man who has seen enough. Freya quickly bows and drags the boy toward the exit, but he stops at the door to deliver one final observation to the patriarch. He warns Balza that suppressing his emotions will only prevent him from ever reaching the true heights of martial arts. As the two leave, the family head is left wondering what kind of monstrous presence he just witnessed in his own son. Once they're safely outside, Freya explodes in frustration over his reckless attitude toward the absolute master of their family. She stares at him with genuine suspicion, unable to believe that an ordinary child could possess such overwhelming confidence and strength. She realizes that while the dragon blood in their veins forces everyone else to obey Balza's aura, this boy remains completely unaffected by it. When asked for his final decision, Zeke chooses to enter the library, prioritizing knowledge of this new era over material wealth. He arrives at the Grand Dragon Hall with Rangis, who is overcome with emotion at the chance to study the elite techniques kept within. They are joined by their other friends as they discuss the strict 5-hour limit placed on their visit to the building. The hero explains that understanding history is his main goal, even as they approach the restricted sections on the upper floors. Laika boasts about her own skills, while the guard reminds them all to follow the rules and keep the noise down. The group splits up to find the specific books they need, marveling at the vast collection surrounding them in the central hall. Our boy steps into the stacks with a grin, eager to see if this era's knowledge can actually surprise him after all this time. Inside the library, our boy is stunned by the sheer amount of history he missed while he was dead. He realizes 1,000 years was more than enough time for the entire world to change beyond recognition. 9 centuries ago, tiers in reality known as rifts opened a gateway to a nightmare dimension called the Chaos Realm. Dangerous monsters poured into the world, forcing humanity to develop special powers just to survive the onslaught. The leaders of the 4 Eldragon branch families were actually legendary warriors from that other world who married into the bloodline. But the most shocking discovery is the existence of magic, a foreign technology that never existed in his previous life. As he searches for answers, he is startled by a mysterious voice that seems to echo through the air with no physical presence nearby. He watches in awe as objects are moved through the air using thin threads of energy, a technique he finds incredibly fascinating. His excitement finally gets the better of him, and the unseen librarian uses those same threads to forcibly eject him from the building. He lands outside in a heap, still yelling about the amazing things he saw as his confused friends rush over to help. His companions proudly display the new martial arts manuals they managed to find, eager to begin their specialized training. Even the most basic protective arts are a source of great excitement for the young students. Our guy can only laugh when he realizes these new techniques are actually just simple pastimes he created in his original life. Even the legendary greatsword style Laika chose was originally his, though it seems someone else refined it over the centuries. He realizes that many of his own ancient creations have been significantly improved by a mysterious figure known as the 15th family head. Despite the changes, the former god of war is genuinely thrilled to see what other surprises this era has in store for him. Half a decade passes in the blink of an eye as the group dedicates themselves to mastering their respective crafts. Now, 12 years old, Laika has grown into a formidable warrior, though she still struggles to keep up with her friend's pace. Zeke has also matured, his physical strength reaching new heights as he prepares to face the challenges of his second adolescence. Inside the grand estate of the Eldragon family, the atmosphere is heavy as a high-ranking officer delivers a classified report that could alter the family's entire future. Captain Ein reveals that a special rift has been discovered, and there is a high probability that it contains a source of the legendary magic water. This incredible substance grants those who drink it the ability to convert their internal energy into mana, a power that has revolutionized the world of combat. The Eldragon family currently lacks its own magical springs, so conquering this new rift is their top priority if they want to maintain their military strength. However, the forest where the rift appeared is also claimed by the Kerberos family, a rival house that uses the symbol of a 3-headed wolf and relies heavily on magic. Captain Ein points out that the magical domain forming around the rift may extend into enemy territory, making a direct confrontation with their rivals inevitable. Balza decides to take the initiative and orders an immediate selection exam across all the dragon's nests to find the strongest heirs to lead the conquest. Far from the political tension, Zeke continues his relentless training regime, overseeing his small group of disciples as they hone their respective martial arts and push past their limits. Our boy isn't a gentle teacher, and he carefully critiques the spear arts of Rangis while adjusting the balance and offensive timing of his other students. Laika observes the session from the sidelines, calling the boy's method of taking brutal hits without using any internal power absolute madness. Zeke just laughs it off while flexing his muscles, proving that his specialized physical training has made his body far sturdier than any normal human's. Despite his eccentric behavior, his peers have already started referring to him as the Eastern Hall's demon child, a title the young master handles with total indifference. The lighthearted mood shifts when Laika reveals that students from all 4 halls will soon be brought together for a massive joint examination. Zeke asks where she hears such specific rumors, and she explains that she simply monitors the movements and private conversations of the Academy's instructors. She also warns him about a dangerous rival candidate from the West Hall, though the thought of a new challenge only makes the reincarnated master smile. A few days later, the students assemble in the arena as a high-ranking instructor arrives to formally address the crowd and explain the next trial. The selection match is officially confirmed for 3 days from now, giving the young warriors one last chance to prepare for the fierce tournament ahead. Freya announces a major tournament starting in 3 days. Those who emerge victorious will be entrusted with a mysterious special mission. She explains that only 7 fighters will be selected to represent their hall. Much to the upperclassmen's shock, students from every grade are allowed to enter. While the instructor remains casual about the details, a senior named Rick steps forward. He arrogantly declares that the 7 spots already belong to the upperclassmen, but Laika immediately stands her ground. She makes it clear that the selection should be based on raw talent, not just how long someone has been around. Rick tries to dismiss her based on status, but his confidence shatters when she flares her aura. Our girl reveals she has already reached the powerful 3-star level. She demands to know if there are actually 7 seniors stronger than her. The crowd of upperclassmen is left stunned as their insults fall silent. The bickering eventually bores Zeke, who makes a terrifying suggestion of his own. He thinks they should simply fight until only the 7 strongest remain. While his idea is a bit too intense for most, the group agrees on holding formal preliminaries. Rick is left with no choice but to accept the challenge. The hero is naturally eager to join and brings his crew along for the ride. He tells his friends that this is the perfect chance to display their growth. Although the other students are paralyzed by fear, our boy reminds them of the truth. Facing stronger opponents is the only way for a warrior to truly improve. With the selection match finalized, the East Hall prepares to prove that their lower class is far more capable than the seniors ever imagined. Rick dismisses the younger students with a sneer, absolutely convinced they have no hope of winning against their more experienced seniors. The upperclassmen laugh at the 2-star babies, while Rengus and the rest of the team struggle to contain their mounting nerves. Zeke notices their hesitation immediately and reminds his friends that they aren't the same people they were 5 years ago. Our boy tells them to have complete faith in the results of the brutal training they've endured under his personal and relentless guidance. Rick demands they stop their useless chattering and come forward so he can finally teach them their proper place in the world. But the entire crowd falls into a stunned silence as the arrogant seniors are dismantled with overwhelming efficiency, leaving Rick face down in the dirt. The master praises Rangus for his sharp instincts before warning the team that real combat will always be their greatest and most demanding teacher. He also commends Celine and Raymond for perfectly executing the complex sword and shield arts he meticulously taught them during their secret sessions. Even the talented Laika has reached incredible new heights, showing off the devastating power she gained through training with the reincarnated martial god. She stands tall over her defeated opponent with absolute confidence, proving that the gap between grades has been completely erased by their hard work. Rick refuses to accept the reality of his crushing defeat, screaming that 3-star warriors should never lose to a group of mere children. Our hero casually counters that rankings and age are just meaningless indicators, while true strength is found only in those who emerge as victors. The upperclassman snaps at what he calls twisted logic, but a dark warning from the kid makes his heart stop in his chest. Rick prepares to go all out in a final desperate charge, yet our hero just gets tired of the talk and invites the senior to strike. He asks the man to show him exactly which martial arts he has mastered, and how much he has actually trained his failing body. The senior unleashes his ultimate technique with a roar, only for the protagonist to instantly shut him down with a perfectly timed counterblow. With a satisfied smile, Zeke acknowledges that the man worked hard before sending him flying across the arena with a single powerful hit. The upperclassman falls unconscious, leaving Laika to marvel at how easily the boy handled an opponent who was supposed to be much stronger. Meanwhile, at the West Hall training grounds, a cold new figure expresses his utter disdain for the pathetic weaklings scattered across the floor. This is Vanille, another candidate for the head of the family who is currently being briefed on their progress by his loyal right hand, Alan. They have finalized their own elite selection team, which includes a talented 3-star lowerclassman that viewers might recognize as the local bully, Retin. Vanille takes interest in the boy's potential and promises to make him a direct subordinate if he continues to prove himself useful in battle. Retin is overcome with joy and excitement, already imagining the immense power he will wield once his new master takes control of the family. Alan reports that Laika will be competing for the East Hall team, prompting Vanille to label his cousin as an endlessly annoying pest. He remains entirely confident that his own team will win the tournament and successfully secure the magic water from the upcoming special mission. Driven by a deep and cold ambition, the silver-haired candidate resolves to crush his competition and claim the seat of the next head. The massive arena is packed as students from every hall gather for the upcoming inter-hall selection matches. While the crowd is smaller after the previous trials, Ranges can't help but think of those who failed, including his own father. Zeke remains focused on scanning the competition, while even the former bullies from the preliminaries express their genuine respect for his power. He notes that while no one has reached the 4-star level yet, most of the representatives are already sitting at a solid 3 stars. The peace is broken when a blonde girl named Sandy arrives, immediately acting superior to her cousin and mocking her choice in friends. As the daughter of a great family head, Sandy doesn't believe that the future of the Eldragons should be associating with such low-level companions. She turns her venom toward our hero, questioning how someone with no real standing can claim to be a worthy companion. Sandy goes further, calling him a mere bastard and wondering how an illegitimate child managed to survive this long. When she mocks the quality of the East Hall, Zeke simply warns her that she will eventually get the rug pulled out from under her. The tension nearly boils over until a calm student from the North Hall named Aegis Vanblade steps in to stop the unnecessary bickering. He reminds everyone that the selection battle is about to start, effectively ending the confrontation between the halls. Just as the crowd settles down, the signal for silence echoes through the massive stadium. The official selection battle is declared open, with the students eager to prove their worth for the upcoming special mission. The tournament is overseen by Captain Teach Mentrick, a man known to all as the Educator. As the grand tournament finally begins, an officer named Teach takes center stage to announce the official rules to the gathered students. Each hall must select 7 participants to engage in one-on-one duels, where the first team to secure 4 individual victories wins the match. Strategy will be essential for the students, as the order of fighters cannot be changed once the tournament bracket is locked in. The ultimate winners will be entrusted with a special mission for the family, serving as a massive step toward the seat of the head. Tensions among the heirs rise instantly, knowing this is their greatest chance to prove their worth before the brackets are even determined. A dangerous-looking boy with light hair smirks, clearly confident in his ability to sweep through the competition. To determine the initial matchups, a representative from each hall must come forward to draw a stone from a sealed box. Laika immediately recognizes the man from the West Hall as a major contender for the succession named Vanille. Our boy listens as his friend explains that their opponent is not only famous, but has many strong warriors backing him up. The atmosphere in the arena shifts as the contestants realize the sheer amount of talent gathered in one place today. The former martial god is genuinely impressed, noting that some of these youngsters have already reached the 3-star level through intense training. Old rivalries flare up in the stands when the upperclassmen spot Rangus among the elite, unable to believe his sudden rise to prominence. The timid spearman looks understandably nervous under the pressure of the crowd, but his friends are right there to support him. As the representatives for the North and South Halls finish their draws, the final pieces of the tournament bracket begin to fall into place. Zeke is caught off guard when he is chosen as the face of the East Hall, despite his desire for the youngsters to take the lead. An arrogant girl from the North Hall is outraged that an illegitimate child is being given such a prominent position over Laika. She mocks his lack of rank and heritage, but Laika simply stands her ground and defends her teammate as the strongest among them. Having trained under the best, our heroine is no longer intimidated by her cousin's insults and warns her that they are plenty strong. The representatives channel their source power into the stones to reveal the colors of their assigned matchups for the first round. The first match is set. East Hall will take on the North, while the West Hall faces off against the South. The North Hall brings out an imposing giant whose sheer size and muscular build are enough to worry the East Hall students. The blonde cousin from the North Hall prepares to humiliate her relative, manifesting a crackling surge of lightning aura. But Laika meets the challenge head-on, ready to prove that her 5 years of hidden training were not in vain. While the others worry about the stakes, the protagonist is just happy to finally find some decent opponents to test his skills against. The inter-hall selection tournament finally begins, as the young martial artists of the academy gather in a massive arena filled with cheering spectators. Rick is the first representative to step onto the stage for the East Hall, and although he tries to sound confident, he is clearly trembling. The head examiner takes his place and calls for the start of the first match, signaling the beginning of a long day of high-stakes duels. Our boy charges forward with a desperate shout, hoping that his initial burst of speed will be enough to catch his opponent off guard. While the others watch with concern, the reincarnated martial god remains perfectly calm, casually asserting that his own eventual victory is an absolute certainty. He observes the exchange with a critical eye, noting that his teammate has enough skill to win if he can just maintain his composure. But the heavy weight of representing his team before such a vast audience is a burden that the senior student isn't quite ready to handle. Zeke scans the arena and spots the top candidates from the other halls, including Laika's cousin Sandy, who is already approaching the 4-star rank. He recognizes that their lineage likely shares many of the same techniques, making this tournament an excellent opportunity for his friends to gain valuable experience. Unfortunately, Rick is unable to overcome the pressure and is pinned down within moments, giving the North Hall their first victory of the tournament. Marin is sent out for the next bout, but the intense atmosphere swallows her whole, and she is defeated just as quickly as the first fighter. The East Hall team is visibly dejected by the back-to-back losses, but their young leader reminds them that this arena is for testing their limits. He encourages them to treat this failure as nourishment for the future, promising that the lessons learned here will keep them alive on a real battlefield. Now the pressure falls entirely on Rangus, and the poor kid looks like he's about to have a nervous breakdown before he even reaches the ring. He's forced to square off against a massive senior student from the North Hall, whose intimidating size makes our timid spearman shake with terror. The boy has faced older students before, but never in front of a crowd this large, and his confidence has completely evaporated under the spotlight. Before the match can start, Zeke pulls his friend aside and asks him to ignore everything except the physical weapon in the enemy's hand. He gives the boy simple tactical advice, telling him to focus entirely on parrying and thrusting rather than worrying about the giant's overwhelming strength. The simple instructions seem to resonate, and a strange, focused calm begins to wash over the spear user as he steps into his starting position. The master is impressed by his student's ability to center himself, even as the spectators begin to mock the obvious size difference between the fighters. The signal is given, and the North Hall giant wastes no time, launching a heavy downward strike intended to end the match with a single blow. The arena floor shatters as the massive sword descends, but Rangus remains calm, managing to stay just outside the range of the crushing impact. Celine and the others watch with bated breath as their teammate is forced onto the defensive by a relentless flurry of powerful sword swings. However, the master points out the sharp look in the boy's eyes, noting that his concentration is deeper than it has ever been before. As the giant prepares a massive finishing move, the spearman flows around the strike like water, leaving his opponent staring at thin air in shock. He follows up with a raging spear thrust that pierces straight through the enemy's opening, finally bringing the massive fighter down to his knees. The examiner calls the match for the East Hall, and the stadium falls silent as they witness the scrawny underdog take the win. The timid warrior lets out a heavy sigh of relief, his heart still pounding after pulling off such a high-stakes reversal under pressure. With their first victory finally secured, the hero grins at his teammates, ready to lead them on a full-scale comeback against the other halls. After the victory of Rangus, East Hall continues to keep the momentum going in the following matches. Our guys quickly stack up wins, moving the group one step closer to an overall victory in the tournament. The sixth match finally arrives, bringing Laika face-to-face with her older cousin and rival, Sandy Typhona. Sandy admits she underestimated the East Hall students, but she remains unimpressed by her younger relative's personal growth. To her, companions are secondary compared to the overwhelming individual power required to actually lead the family. She mocks the fact that our girl isn't even the #1 student in her own dormitory hall. Laika is quick to retort, standing her ground despite the clear difference in their reputations and rank. Internally, she reaffirms her goals, knowing she hasn't given up on the dream of becoming the next head. She declares that the person she is today can win, but the older cousin simply scoffs at her. Sandy decides that words are meaningless and demands that the younger girl show her that supposed strength. The lightning swordswoman vanishes and reappears instantly, beginning her assault with a sudden and blindingly fast strike. The blow catches our girl off guard, sending her stumbling back as she struggles to keep up with the speed. From the sidelines, Zeke Eldrigan observes that the older Typhona clearly holds the advantage in both technique and experience. A powerful secret art is unleashed, striking with the weight of electrical judgment and leaving a mark. Her friends watch in horror as the blonde prodigy is forced into a defensive and desperate position. Even the strongest member of their team is being pushed back in an instant by the North Hall genius. The spectators note that Sandy was actually the one who trained her younger cousin many years ago. Sandy mocks the girl for never fixing her old habit of swinging wildly whenever she gets cornered. She follows up with a series of lightning flashes and scatterbolts that level the arena floor. The violent energy sends our girl crashing into the dirt, battered and bruised under the electrical hail. Sandy claims she should have forced the girl to train at the North Hall years ago instead of East. Despite the heavy damage, the young swordswoman refuses to stay down, barely holding onto her blade. Sandy tells her to give up, threatening to bring her back to the main family by force. Sandy decides to end the stubborn resistance once and for all, growing tired of the girl's refusal to yield. She demands that her younger cousin reflect on her weakness before delivering another series of crushing blows. The assault is relentless, sending her tumbling through the dirt as the audience watches in shocked silence. Sandy stands over the fallen figure with cold indifference, certain that the match is already over. She looks down with pity, suggesting that the gap between them is simply too wide for simple effort. While her friends panic, Zeke remains calm, sensing that his student is about to break through another shell. Sandy prepares her first secret technique, intending to deliver a finishing blow that the crowd fears might be fatal. A massive explosion of electrical light fills the entire arena, leaving everyone wondering if she survived. The onlookers can barely see through the smoke and dust as the violent energy finally begins to dissipate. To Sandy's absolute shock, A battered and bloodied survivor is still standing tall in the center of the pit. The older cousin is speechless, unable to believe that her finishing strike failed to secure the win. Laika admits that her old self would have been defeated, but she hasn't spent 5 years idle. She flashes a confident grin and declares that the match isn't over. In fact, it's just getting started. Before the match begins, Laika is clearly on edge, recalling that her opponent was the one who first taught her the fundamentals of the lightning style. Even though she has trained hard for 5 years, she has never beaten her cousin even once and knows Sandy has been training just as diligently. Noticing her doubt, Zeke reminds her that their brutal sessions together were specifically designed to keep her calm and focused during the most intense battles. He tells her to trust in those long years of preparation, playfully asking if their time together was really that much of a nightmare to forget now. Zeke points out that her old habit of letting emotions cloud her judgment is gone, as she has finally developed the composure to truly see her opponent. The hero asserts that with her talent, being able to calmly analyze movements while under attack will grant her an incredible advantage. He promises that once she faces her cousin in the arena, she will understand exactly how much more powerful she has become. Laika finally relaxes as Zeke confidently declares that anyone trained by the strongest person alive has no reason to worry about past results. Zeke urges her to use this as an opportunity to study her cousin's lightning greatsword arts more closely than ever before. In the middle of the heated duel, our boy watches from the sidelines and commands his student to keep her eyes wide open. Despite being bloodied and battered, Laika takes Sandy's strikes head-on, using every hit to map out the flow of her relative's techniques. Sandy is stunned to see her student tracking her every move, as Laika suddenly adjusts her rhythm to match and slow down the incoming greatsword. With a thunderous crash, our girl forces an opening, sending her cousin flying back as she breaks through the defense with unexpected speed. Sandy realizes too late that her student has mastered tempo variation, a skill she was missing until she finally understood it in the heat of combat. The crowd and her teammates are speechless as Laika begins to copy and enhance the very style she once looked up to. Zeke explains to his friends that fighting someone with the same technique yields the greatest insight when one has the composure to study them. Sandy refuses to accept being matched by what she calls a makeshift imitation, but her anger only makes her predictable to her student's calm eyes. Our girl moves like a flash of lightning, completely overwhelming the woman who once served as her mentor. After training to the point of death with Zeke, Laika finally unleashes her own lightning greatsword arts in a massive explosion of power. As the smoke clears and the arena floor cracks under the pressure, the arrogant Sandy lies flat on her back, completely defeated. The match is called in favor of East Hall, while Sandy offers a faint smile of acceptance, realizing just how much her student has surpassed her. Watching from the shadows, the rival head candidate Vanille is clearly shaken by the sheer growth of the East Hall fighters. The team cheers for their victory, though Laika is relieved that she won her match so Zeke wouldn't have to face the next terrifying opponent. Celine warns them that the next fighter, Aegis Vanblade, is considered the greatest genius his family has ever produced. Judging by his aura, Zeke acknowledges that this boy stands a head above the rest, and facing him would have been a truly uncertain challenge. However, even though East Hall has already won the tournament bracket, the examiner shocks everyone by announcing that the matches will continue. The group wonders what the officials are planning, while Bro suspects there is a hidden reason for forcing this extra showdown. But as long as he gets to fight someone that strong, Zeke couldn't care less about their schemes, showing off his classic battle maniac grin. Aegis expresses his genuine excitement to finally face the East Hall's representative in single combat, regardless of how the previous matches turned out for his team. He admits he is extremely curious about the boy who was chosen for the lead spot, despite having a 3-star genius like Laika on the roster. The North Hall genius points out that Zeke is still only at the 2-star level, making his role as the team's representative a very interesting mystery. Our boy returns the sentiment with a broad smile, admitting that he has been dying for a chance to cross blades with a real prodigy of this caliber. He acknowledges that while there are many skilled warriors in the venue today, Aegis is an exceptional talent that truly deserves his full attention and focus. As the 7th match of the day is officially called to begin, both fighters take their respective stances and prepare to move at high speeds. Aegis lunges forward first with a burst of energy, closing the gap between the two fighters in what feels like less than a single heartbeat. Zeke is immediately impressed by the magnificent footwork as Aegis covers the distance. He then unleashes a flurry of sharp strikes from his specialized 9 blades technique. Even as the presence of the cold steel seemingly vanishes from his sight, the kid relies on his sharp instincts to navigate the incoming storm of lethal attacks. He twists his small body at the last possible second, narrowly avoiding a direct hit that the watching crowd was absolutely certain would end the fight. Instead of feeling any pressure from the close call, our guy laughs and asks to see even more of these excellent maneuvers as the duel continues to escalate. Aegis obliges by shifting into the 1,000-blade wave style, creating a complex attack trajectory that is nearly impossible for the average eye to follow or predict. Zeke continues to dodge as the arena fills with water and lightning effects, struggling to read the ever-changing path of the blade through the constant visual chaos. He observes that the North Hall representative hasn't wasted a single movement, maintaining perfect power and rhythm through his years of tireless training and dedication. The genius is frustrated that he still hasn't managed to catch his target, but the protagonist just casually invites him to spar together once this battle ends. Suddenly, our boy launches his own heavy counterattack, landing a punch that carries far more physical power than a typical 2-star fighter should ever be able to produce. Edgis is stunned by the immense weight of the blow, realizing that the kid has already adapted to his personal breathing and fighting rhythm mid-match. He understands that the initial observation phase is finished. He prepares to raise the stakes even further to meet the overwhelming pressure coming from his young opponent. The battlefield blurs as Edgis activates his lingering shadow technique, filling the entire space with afterimages that effectively hide his true location from his enemy's sight. He strikes with renewed vigor and precision, determined to meet the high expectations of the opponent who is pushing him to his absolute physical limits. A blade finally manages to graze Zeke's chest. However, the sight of his own blood only makes him realize just how much fun he is truly having. After a grueling battle, Sandy Typhona finally comes to terms with her defeat as she lies exhausted on the arena floor. Rangis rushes to check on her, but the proud noblewoman simply smiles, acknowledging that her opponent was truly the stronger warrior. She apologizes for falling short, but her teammates quickly reassure her that they were the ones who couldn't keep up. With a newfound sense of respect, Sandy resolves to work even harder alongside her friends for the battles yet to come. The group turns their attention back to the stadium, where an incredible clash between two geniuses has the entire crowd in shock. Edgis Van Blade is fighting at his absolute limit, manifesting 5 aura blades that slice through the air with terrifying speed. Sandy is stunned to see Edgis forced to go all out, realizing that he truly is the strongest among the traditional candidates. Edgis unleashes his secret 1,000-blade technique, yet despite the barrage, he finds his rival remains completely unbothered by the onslaught. Frustrated that his best moves aren't landing, the North Hall genius demands to know how his opponent can have such superhuman endurance. Zeke casually brushes it off, explaining that while flashy techniques are good, basic stamina training is the foundation of real strength. As he analyzes the performance of the generated blades, our boy concludes that the potential of this generation could be very interesting. Through this battle, the reincarnated martial god finally confirms the fundamental difference between his era and the present day. 1,000 years ago, the attack motion itself was paramount, but now, the manifestation of source power has become the true essence of combat. He admits he was so focused on physical techniques that he failed to notice this fascinating shift in the world's martial logic. The hour-long battle shows no sign of ending, as Zeke perfectly counters every strike with a superhuman level of precision. Laika senses the climax approaching, while the two warriors pause to acknowledge the wonder of their exchange on the battlefield. Edgis decides to pay his ultimate respects by revealing a brand new technique he developed in the heat of their combat. As the genius prepares his final strike, Zeke realizes why he couldn't simply overpower him and vows to keep struggling until the end. The 5-blade ultimate strike descends, met head-on by the kid's modified past-life techniques that ignite the entire arena. A series of explosive shockwaves rock the foundation of the stadium as our guy pushes his physical power to its absolute maximum. The sheer impact sends debris flying everywhere, leaving the onlookers in absolute awe of the massive power displayed before them. As the smoke clears, the official examiner calls the match, finally putting an end to the destructive duel. Edgis lies exhausted, unable to move even a finger, as Zeke is declared the winner for East Hall with a triumphant grin. The crowd erupts in disbelief over the upset victory, while Rangis celebrates his friend's incredible accomplishment with pure joy. Laika can't help but call him strange for destroying the arena again, but Zeke is already looking toward the next opponent. The attention turns to Vanille Fafniled Eldragon, who steps out for the West Hall team with an imposing and dark presence. However, contrary to any expectations of a balanced fight, the match between the West and South Halls becomes a brutal slaughter. The West Hall representative dominates his opponent with such ease that the contest is over before it even truly begins. Back in the pit, our boy is stunned to see the destroyed arena floor repairing itself right before his eyes. He learns the venue is made of self-repairing aetherite, a rare material that restores its form when infused with source power. Vanille easily dominates his opponent from the Sonar family, leaving the crowd in awe. Even the lead examiner is unsettled by how one-sided the match actually felt. The final match is officially declared for the West Hall, confirming a high-stakes showdown against Zeke's team. While Rick remains in absolute shock, Zeke narrows his eyes and notices that the losing girl's source power was being unnaturally disrupted during the exchange. He suspects something was fundamentally wrong with her flow, and it appears that the suspicious referee managed to catch the anomaly as well. The rest of the group acknowledges that head candidates like Vanille are simply on a different level than the average student. Rangis points out that it isn't just their leader, but the entire West Hall squad that feels menacingly strong and well-prepared. Celine and Rick reflect on their own shortcomings, admitting they still have a long way to go before they can reach that elite peak. But Rick finds his resolve and declares he has no intention of losing, which earns a subtle nod of pride from our boy. Zeke shifts his focus to Laika, who hasn't realized the trickery and believes she's witnessing a level of strength that is completely unreachable. Shaken to her core by the display, she asks her friends for a moment alone to clear her head before the finals begin. Alone in the courtyard, Laika sits by a fountain and obsessively wonders how Vanille was able to crush a formidable opponent without taking so much as a single scratch. She is haunted by a painful childhood memory of defeat, realizing the gap between them hasn't closed as much as she once hoped. She hates herself for feeling a surge of relief that Zeke is the one who has to face the monster next. Vanille suddenly interrupts her thoughts, approaching the fountain with an arrogant smirk and a desire to taunt the lightning swordswoman even further. He laughs at her serious expression, reminding her that she was never able to beat him back when they were both 5 years old. He demands she submit to him now, claiming she'll never win and promising to treat her well once he becomes the family head. Laika's anger boils over as he touches her shoulder, but he simply dismisses her glare with a cold and deeply condescending laugh. Later, Vanille meets with a green-haired associate to discuss their secret strategy, plotting to use more underhanded tactics to ensure Zeke is dismantled. Even though Zeke defeated a genius like Edgis, Vanille is confident that his hidden tricks will be enough to crush the illegitimate brat. He remains absolutely convinced that his team will be the ones to walk away with the tournament's ultimate victory. Upperclassman Rick feels the heavy weight of the finals, realizing his group is considered the weakest in the East Hall. Across the ring, the elites of the West Hall stand like an impossible wall of talent, making him wonder if they can actually pull off a victory. Before the boy can spiral into his own doubts, Zeke delivers a sharp smack to the back of his head. The hero scolds him for losing his edge, demanding to know if he came here just to accept a loss. The reincarnated god reminds him that once a battle begins, you fight to win, no matter the strength gap between you. The encouragement works, and as a final tip, our boy tells Rick to relax his shoulders to properly channel his power. He explains that the Great Power Fist scatters its energy if the user is too stiff, rather than focusing it into a single point. With his fire renewed, the student heads for the stage while Zeke gives him a confident high five and a grin. Laika watches in total confusion, asking how Zeke knows the intricacies of a style he has never even studied before. He just looks at her with a smirk, ignoring her logic as he prepares to watch the first match unfold. When she presses him for answers, he simply declares that he knows everything because he is him. Rick steps onto the sand to face a fighter brimming with typical West Hall arrogance and a mocking sneer. The enemy insults his previous performances, but Rick bites back, declaring that he has changed since his last defeat. The examiner signals the start, and the West Hall fighter immediately draws a wicked dagger for a speed-based assault. Moving with predatory speed, the opponent lunges forward using the mantis slash technique of his insect dagger style. Rick takes a heavy blow to the chest but manages to block the follow-up, surprising the enemy with his newfound durability. The pressure doesn't stop as a flurry of strikes known as the Swarming Locust Devour rains down on him. The opponent laughs at his struggle, but Rick realizes that while his enemy is fast, he is not invincible. He gets called slow and weak, taking hit after hit while he waits for the right moment to make a move. In the middle of the chaos, the boy closes his eyes and focuses purely on his master's advice to relax. He ignores the stinging pain of the strikes, standing his ground as the fighter lunges in for a final blow. To the crowd's absolute shock, Rick reaches out and catches the cold blade with his bare aura-wrapped hand. With the opponent trapped and wide open, the upperclassman pulls him in to deliver a single, concentrated counterattack. Channeling all his strength into his fist, he unleashes the Great Power Fist, shattering the enemy's guard and his pride. The massive impact sends the West Hall fighter tumbling across the arena, and the referee immediately calls the match. The examiner declares Rick the winner, awarding the East Hall their first point in a shocking upset for the elites. The West Hall team can't believe their strongest was just taken down by a supposed weakling. The crowd erupts as the East Hall takes an early lead, and his teammates cheer wildly from the sidelines. Rick lets out a triumphant shout, finally feeling like he has proven his place among the representatives. He stands tall despite his exhaustion, having overcome his internal doubts through the hero's guidance. However, the victory is short-lived as Vanille watches with a cold glare, demanding an apology from his defeated subordinate. He turns his attention to his next fighter, making it absolutely clear that losing is not an option for their hall. With a look of pure malice, the head candidate orders his student to absolutely crush their next opponent without mercy. The fighter agrees and steps up while Rick cheers on Marin, unaware of the brutal orders being given. Marin takes her position with confidence as the second match of the finals is officially declared to have begun. She leads with her red flame sword style, unleashing a spark slash that lights up the arena with fiery aura. But her speed is countered instantly by a superior reflex, as the West Hall warrior catches her completely off guard. Using the Great Wild Spear style, he retaliates with a rampaging pierce that drives straight through her defense. The impact is violent, sending the girl crashing into the stone as her vision begins to blur from the heavy strike. She struggles to even breathe as she coughs up blood, realizing that her opponent is fighting with intent to kill. The East Hall watches in horror, realizing that the intensity of this assault has gone far beyond a normal tournament match. Rick and Laika try to rush to her aid, but Zeke stops them, knowing they would only face disqualification now. The West Hall fighter stands over her unconscious form, pinning her down to emphasize his brutal victory. Only then is the match officially called, evening the score, but leaving the East Hall in a state of absolute shock, They rush to the girl's side as she slips into unconsciousness, leaving the arena floor covered in a thick cloud of despair. Ranges cries out in horror as Marin is carried off the field after her brutal loss. Zeke and the others watch from the stands, stunned by the sheer brutality of the West Hall's tactics. When Rangus demands to know why such force was necessary, Retin simply scoffs with a cold look. He claims that real combat requires total domination to ensure a certain victory. The bully mockingly calls the East Hall students soft for their concern. He explains that those in the West Hall are trained to crush their enemies without mercy, leaving Laika to suspect this was all planned by Vanille to humiliate them. He argues that since the referee didn't stop the match, he was simply breaking his opponent's spirit. This cold logic completely infuriates the rest of the East Hall team. Retin turns his attention to his next opponent. He tells Rangus that he is free to forfeit now if he doesn't want to be toyed with like his friend was. The bully brings up the years of childhood torment Rangus suffered back in their home village. He hopes that the old familiar fear will return and break the boy's confidence before the fight even starts. Despite the insults, Rangus steps forward into the arena. He assures Laika that he isn't going to run away from this confrontation anymore. With a new sense of determination, the spearman declares that today is the day he finally wins. He will surpass the man who has looked down on him for so long. Suddenly, Zeke's voice echoes directly in his mind. He explains that he is using a secret technique to offer some last-minute advice before the next round begins. Our boy speaks directly into his mind, telling him to picture drifting clouds and flowing water. He advises his friend to keep his spirit calm and fluid, reminding him that a true warrior remains unshaken even when the pressure of battle feels completely overwhelming. The examiner snaps them back to reality. As the second match is officially called, Rangus takes his stance and prepares to use the Cloudwater spear style. The battle begins with a quick thrust from the spear, but Retin is just as fast, sneering as he effortlessly dodges the spearman's attempt to take the initiative. Unleashing his serpent strike sword style, the bully lands a heavy blow that sends Rangus reeling. He mockingly asks if that weak strike was really his best effort. Another strike comes in at an impossible angle, curving around Rangus's guard to draw blood. The boy gasps for air under the weight of the relentless pressure. Rangus tries to find a rhythm to strike back, however, Retin's movements are far too erratic, turning every defensive move into a new opportunity for a slash. A powerful blow sends the East Hall fighter crashing across the aetherite floor. His friends cry out in worry as he struggles to push himself back up. Retin laughs, revealing that his specialty is actually countering his opponents. He claims to be several levels above his rival in every possible way. He continues to belittle him, calling Rangus a fake just like his father. This cruel insult strikes a deep chord of anger in the young spearman's heart. The physical and mental toll begins to weigh heavy. For a moment, Rangus wonders if he was simply deluding himself about his own potential to grow stronger. In the depths of his despair, a peaceful memory of a fishing trip surfaces. He remembers the quiet sounds of the river and his father's gentle smile from years ago. His father explained how human worries are trivial compared to the eternal flow of the river. He taught him that true strength comes from drifting serenely like the clouds above. Back in the present, Retin moves in for the finishing blow. He screams that a fake will always stay a fake as he prepares to end the match for good. But as Rangus whispers the words of the lesson, his eyes clear and his movements become eerily calm. This sudden shift shocks the bully into a momentary halt. Zeke notices the change immediately. Our guy watches with a confident grin as his student finally begins to grasp the true essence of his martial arts style. Retin stares in total disbelief as he realizes the boy he spent years tormenting has somehow reached the 3-star rank, standing on the same level as him. Refusing to accept that a commoner could ever be his equal, the bully's face contorts with rage as he prepares to launch one last desperate strike. He unleashes his serpentine slash technique, sending a jagged wave of purple energy tearing across the arena floor toward his target in a bid for victory. But Rangus reads the movement perfectly, calmly evading every blow and making it clear to the bully that his fastest strikes are no longer a threat. The bully's face twists in panic when he sees his most powerful technique being casually bypassed by an opponent who was once far beneath him. Zeke watches from the sidelines, noting with satisfaction that his friend has finally taken a massive step toward grasping the true essence of combat. He explains that true mastery is like flowing water, softly changing shape and allowing every ounce of an enemy's force to pass harmlessly away. Our guy is genuinely impressed by the sheer amount of focus required to make such a difficult power his own in such a remarkably short time. As Retin screams for his opponent to stay back, it becomes obvious to everyone watching that the balance of the match has shifted entirely. Zeke observes as the once calm water of the technique begins to grow wild, turning into an unstoppable current that no martial artist could resist. Rangus prepares to deliver the final blow, his aura manifesting as a violent storm that is ready to sweep away anything in its path. A massive pillar of energy erupts from the ground, slamming into Retin and burying him deep within the shattered stone of the arena floor. The examiner calls the match immediately, declaring another vital win for the East Hall while the stunned crowd begins to erupt in cheers. Still processing his victory, Rangius is snapped out of his trance when the lightning swordswoman rushes onto the stage to celebrate their win. It finally sinks in that he actually defeated his childhood tormentor, while reaching a level of strength that once seemed like a distant dream. The rest of the team gathers around in shock, describing his final strike as a legendary dragon leaping up a massive waterfall with sheer power. Zeke identifies the move as the Rising Dragon Pierce, a high-level technique from the second volume of the very spear style he once created. He praises the boy for reaching such heights through self-study, though he keeps his own history with the martial art a closely guarded secret. It is a wonderful moment for our boy to see such young talent sprout and carve open a path using nothing but their own strength. With their morale reaching its absolute peak, the group prepares for the final stretch of matches as the intensity of the competition continues to rise. Celine loses a narrow match, but Raymond manages to pull off a hard-fought win with his shield, keeping their lead at 3-2. Laika knows that her upcoming match will be the deciding factor, and she is determined to finish the tournament once and for all. Zeke pulls her aside to see how she is holding up, but the lightning swordswoman assures him that she is just as ready as ever. She marches toward the stage with a confident smile, though the reincarnated martial god suddenly feels a strange and heavy chill in the air. A dangerous aura begins to spread through the arena, leaving our guy with a very bad feeling about the fight that is to come. Alan starts the round with arrogant trash talk, mocking his opponent as a useless pawn while anticipating an easy victory. As the sixth match is called, the two fighters prepare to settle the score on the arena floor. Laika charges forward with blistering speed, forcing Alan to acknowledge that her mastery over lightning aura is greater than he expected. He realizes that under normal circumstances he might have lost, but he remains calm because of a secret advantage. Alan knows that his leader has already rigged the fight in their favor, making the outcome a foregone conclusion. Suddenly, Laika's movements falter as her signature lightning begins to fade, and her opponent declares that she stands no chance. She is caught off guard by a brutal strike that sends her reeling across the stone stage. Her friends watch in horror as she desperately tries to summon her power, only to find her source energy completely unresponsive. Alan continues his relentless assault, leaving the young swordswoman screaming in pain as she takes one heavy hit after another. Without source power to reinforce her body, every incoming attack becomes a potential death sentence. Sandy and the others realize something is wrong, noticing that the prodigy is fighting as if her internal energy has been cut off. Despite taking an immense amount of damage, she manages to stay conscious and upright, earning a mocking bit of praise before her opponent moves in for the end. As Alan prepares to deliver a final strike to the grounded girl, Sandy realizes she can no longer stand by and watch her cousin get executed. She rushes onto the field and blocks the incoming blow, demanding to know what the representative thinks he is doing. Alan plays dumb, acting as if he wasn't intentionally trying to kill a defenseless opponent while the match was still active. Sandy isn't buying the act, accusing him of taking advantage of an obvious injury to land a strike far too dangerous for a tournament. Alan dismisses her concerns, claiming his hall treats every match like a real battle where the enemy's condition is irrelevant. Vineil steps forward to back his teammate, insulting the East Hall for being soft and playing at a pretend war. He smirks while claiming they are holding back, even if his opponent ended up severely broken in the process. The argument is cut short when the examiner silences the crowd, angry that anyone would dare to interrupt without his permission. He declares that fools have no right to disrupt the fight, and reminds them that he alone decides when a battle is over. The official awards the victory to West Hall, ordering everyone to clear the stage so the next match can proceed. As Laika is carried off to the infirmary, Edgis notes that Zeke was also ready to jump in and save her. Sandy remains suspicious, convinced their rivals are using trickery, and warns our guy to be extremely careful. Zeke steps up for the final bout, but Vineil is already gloating, convinced that the protagonist's loss is a certainty. The seventh match is officially called, and Zeke makes it clear through his intense gaze that he is more than tired of his opponent's smug and arrogant attitude. He doesn't waste time with posturing, lunging forward with speed that completely catches the silver-haired fighter off guard and leaves him frozen. Before his enemy can react, Zeke lands a heavy punch right to the face, welcoming him to the reality of actual combat. Vineil demands they fight as if it were a real battle to the death, and Zeke is more than happy to indulge the boy's reckless request. The hero observes his opponent with a cold stare, while Vineil's associates watch from the sidelines with growing concern. The action begins as the West Hall candidate charges forward, desperate to land a blow on the calm boy in front of him. Vineil is shaken when he realizes his fastest counterattack didn't even graze his target, leaving Zeke completely unharmed. Zeke instantly identifies the special wind-type source power, recognizing it as the unique legacy of the prestigious Fafneld clan. Bro mocks the boy for talking so much about real combat, asking him how he likes the taste of a genuine struggle. With blinding speed, Zeke closes the distance once more, landing another clean strike while counting his successful hits. The poisoner reels back from the impact, gasping for air as he struggles to maintain his composure in the face of such dominance. Panic begins to set in for Vineil as he realizes he's being handled like a complete amateur by someone he considered beneath him. The hero scolds him for getting lost in his own thoughts during a fight, noting that his opponent must feel far too safe. Zeke keeps up the pressure with relentless physical strikes, refusing to give the desperate head candidate even a single moment of relief. Vineil asks what he's talking about when Zeke mentions a count, and the hero simply sighs at the boy's lack of perception. Our guy explains that he's counting the number of times Vineil has already died, pointing out 3 specific fatal openings in his defense. The match continues as Zeke declares that their brief break is over, ready to resume the lesson in real combat. Laika finally wakes up and is stunned by the sight of Zeke completely dismantling the strongest student of the West Hall. Aegis watches with a sweat-beaded brow, realizing that his own duel with Zeke was nothing more than a friendly sparring match. To the genius of the Thousand Blade style, the boy's sheer level of skill feels like the very definition of unfair. Zeke lectures that while warriors must be ready to crush their enemies, Vineil's understanding of combat is far removed from the truth. He points out that fighting under the supervision of instructors with healing potions is a very soft environment for such big talk. The hero bluntly states that the boy is simply running away from his own weakness by relying on dirty tricks and poison. The West Hall candidate screams in rage, claiming that an illegitimate child has no right to lecture him about strength. Zeke casually accepts the boy's rebellion, inviting him to release all that pent-up frustration in one final desperate charge. Vineil unleashes the Stormblade technique, a high-level fan art intended to shred anything in its path. The invisible energy starts tearing up the arena floor, leaving the spectators in awe of the sheer destructive power on display. Aegis explains that the wind aura of the Fafnir family is terrifying specifically because it cannot be seen by the naked eye. Even knowing its nature, dealing with a continuous barrage of invisible attacks is an almost impossible task for any normal student. Despite the danger, Zeke effortlessly follows the flow of the air, stepping through the gaps in the storm without taking a single hit. Vineil's composure breaks completely as he swings blindly, unable to understand how his ultimate move keeps missing so completely. Bro asks if his opponent is feeling any better yet, noting that while the boy's stubborn will is admirable, it's also useless. It's clear to everyone watching that Vineil's body is rapidly reaching its physical limit after such a reckless display of power. The hero suggests ending the match to prevent further suffering, but his opponent is too far gone into his own madness to listen. Suddenly, the broken boy starts laughing maniacally as if he's already secured a secret victory that no one else can see. Vineil claims that Zeke is already finished, leaving the hero momentarily confused as a new technique begins to manifest. A gale bullet erupts with explosive force, catching the hero off guard and finally landing a direct hit on his shoulder. Rick and the others are in total shock, unable to believe that their seemingly invincible teammate actually took damage. Laika and Marin manage to rejoin the group on the stands, their faces pale as they watch the fight intensify. Rangus asks for an explanation, sensing that something fundamental about the way Zeke is fighting has changed. The blonde swordswoman reveals the terrifying truth. Halfway through her own battle, her source power was completely sealed away. The group realizes with horror that Zeke is likely fighting this entire duel without any internal energy, relying purely on his physical skills. Vineil gloats over the successful hit, mocking Zeke's earlier confidence while the hero simply lets out a weary sigh. Desperate for the win, the villain prepares his most powerful move, the typhoon falling to dust, to finish the boy off. Rangus yells out in terror as the massive storm closes in, certain that no one could survive such a concentrated assault. But Zeke effortlessly counters, shattering the ultimate wind technique with a single, raw physical strike that defies all logic. Vineil falls to the ground in total disbelief, his pride and his body both broken by a monster that doesn't even need source power. Laika concludes that it doesn't really matter to her mentor anyway. His mastery of martial arts exists beyond the limits of mere energy. Vineil is absolutely horrified and trembling as he realizes his secret has been discovered, while Zeke calmly identifies the toxic substance as if it were nothing special. The boy is completely stunned and speechless, wondering how someone could have detected a lethal toxin that is supposed to be untraceable even to the most skilled masters. Zeke explains that the poison only triggers when source power is stirred up, which is exactly why it managed to stay hidden from his detection until this very moment. Even with his energy sealed by the toxins, our boy explains that a perfectly trained body isn't hindered by such cheap tricks, proving his status as the strongest fighter. Vineil is deeply insulted and enraged that his ultimate creation is being treated as if it were completely meaningless by his opponent during their final selection match. Zeke admits that the toxic concoction is actually quite impressive since it doesn't harm the user's own body while being channeled through their power into others. However, he lets out a massive and echoing shout, declaring that no matter how groundbreaking the poison might be, it will simply never work on someone as powerful as him. Vineil can't believe his own eyes when he realizes his opponent just effortlessly expelled the toxins right through his nose in a single breath, while standing perfectly still. Zeke warns that relying completely on schemes won't get him very far, leaving the boy to spiral into his own dark and painful memories of failure and inadequacy. A flashback reveals Vineil's harsh and lonely upbringing, where his reason to exist was tied entirely to his ability to become the next head of the powerful Eldrigan family. While the other candidates were seen as absolute geniuses, He felt ordinary and was constantly reminded of his own lack of talent by every person around him. His mother's constant and harsh scolding pushed him to find another way to survive in this cutthroat environment where physical strength was the only value that anyone cared about. He eventually discovered that his true talent lay in the dark research and creation of lethal poisons, giving him a way to fight back against those who mocked him. He believed that by mastering these deadly mixtures, he could finally earn the acknowledgement and respect he always craved from his demanding and cold family. All those years of struggle feel wasted as he collapses in the arena, unable to accept his absolute and humiliating defeat at the hands of a monster. He screams at Zeke for daring to judge him, claiming that the strongest could never understand the daily pain of being compared to geniuses without any hope. Driven to a desperate corner, the fighter lunges forward with everything he has left, but our hero easily shuts down his clumsy and predictable attack without effort. The boy is disarmed in an instant, his blade falling uselessly to the ground as his last hope for a victory in the selection matches completely vanishes. A massive cloud of purple smoke erupts across the stage, causing the worried students in the crowd to gasp in fear for their friend's safety. While the onlookers watch in silence, Laika observes the match closely, trying to figure out what Zeke is planning to do with his opponent now that the end is near. Vineil decides to throw away his pride entirely, unleashing a final volley of poisoned needles and smoke to secure a win at any cost before he collapses. He even risks inhaling the toxic fumes himself just to land one hit, but he is met with a terrifying gaze from within the dense haze. Zeke catches him by the collar, asking if that pathetic display was really the best he could offer after all his earlier talk about his talent for poison. The poisoner is frozen with fear as he stares into golden eyes that feel like they belong to a prehistoric beast from the ancient Chaos realm. Our boy decides to give some helpful life advice, explaining that the boy has a massive misunderstanding about the true nature of growth and strength. He tells him that martial talent and source power control aren't actually the most important things required to become a truly powerful warrior on a modern battlefield. To reach the ultimate top, one simply needs a burning desire to win and protect what truly matters to them above all else in this world. Looking at the boy's unique and fluid movements, Zeke suggests that he has simply been using the wrong weapon for his specific body type all along. He proposes that an umbrella would actually be the perfect fit for his unconventional style of combat, much like the traditional and historic iron fan. While it sounds like a joke, our hero explains that most things in the world can be turned into a deadly tool in the right hands, as he watches for a reaction. Vineil is stunned by the realization that someone is actually offering him a path forward instead of mocking his obvious lack of talent during the tournament. Zeke gives him a reassuring and gentle pat on the head, telling him that his way of thinking isn't entirely wrong, just misplaced. He just needs to change where he applies his skills, offering to personally train him until he becomes exactly as strong as he wants to be. A vision of a real battlefield fills the space, showing that pride is useless if you can't protect anything you hold dear in life. Bro promises to make him strong enough that he'll never have to moan about talent ever again once the brutal training officially begins. For the first time in his life, Vineil sees a glimmer of real hope for his future as he looks up at his formidable rival. But Zeke suddenly changes his tone, remembering that they are actually still in the middle of a tournament match that needs to reach its conclusion. Without any hesitation, he delivers a massive punch that sends the poisoner flying across the entire arena floor with incredible and sudden force. The boy is knocked out cold, and the examiner watches in absolute awe as the selection matches finally reach their long-awaited end. With that final victory, East Hall is declared the champion, completing their unlikely and triumphant comeback against the other established halls. The team erupts in cheers, celebrating the fact that they've secured their spots for the special upcoming mission in the newly discovered rift. Even the rivals from the other halls acknowledge their strength as the heavy atmosphere shifts and the long day of fighting comes to a close. A massive feast is laid out for the victors to enjoy, but Zeke is already looking forward to testing his skills in the next challenge. Following their victory in the selection matches, the exhausted winners from the East Hall gather for a celebratory meal, but the atmosphere remains heavy with anticipation for what comes next. Even as they prepare to eat, the blonde swordswoman and her friends can't help but wonder why the Academy has summoned all the remaining competitors to the hall. While the others fret over the coming announcement, our guy Zeke is far more interested in the feast, casually digging into the meat without a single care in the world. The meal is interrupted as a senior official enters the hall to formally reward the students for their performance while preparing them for an urgent assignment. He explains that a special rift has just been discovered on family territory, and because of its unique properties, it requires a strike team of unconventional fighters to investigate. These rare rifts are unlike anything they've cleared before, acting as localized dimensional tiers that reject anyone who doesn't meet very specific entrance criteria. Only 7 people are permitted to enter at a time, and every one of them must be at a 3-star rank or lower to avoid being forcibly pushed out. The primary goal is to retrieve a rare resource known as magic water, which is the essential catalyst used to convert one's inner power into true magic. This world is ruled by 8 powerful houses, but the Eldragon family is the only one currently lacking a consistent source of this transformative liquid. Because the rift sits dangerously close to a rival's border, securing the site is a critical mission that cannot be allowed to fail under any circumstances. Although the East Hall technically won the tournament, the Academy clarifies that the matches were actually used to scout the best possible candidates for this dangerous expedition. By watching every student fight to the limit, the instructors were able to gauge their individual strengths and determine who would be most effective for a team operation. To the hero's shock, the official publicly tasks him with selecting the final members of the group, assuming he'll take the lead after his dominant performance. Bro immediately tries to pass the buck, insisting that the blonde swordswoman should be the one to choose since she's actually interested in family leadership roles. He notes this is a chance for her to practice evaluating people, and frankly, he'd probably just pick himself for the entire team anyway. While the other students are stunned that he would walk away from such a prestigious opportunity, our boy admits that he simply has no ambition for titles or politics. He only desires to reach the absolute summit of the martial path, making it clear that he will follow her into the rift. But he refuses to be the boss. Miles away, news of the discovery reaches a rival leader, who is furious that his scouts were misdirected while the Eldragons moved in to claim the territory. The rival head realizes that his enemies are desperate for the magic water and are likely sending their most promising students to secure it while their soldiers are busy. He scoffs at the conditions, knowing that the strict entry limits create an opportunity to strike while the family has its guard down. When he learns that the Academy is sending trainees instead of regular troops, he decides that this is the perfect chance to eliminate the Eldragon heirs in one go. He asks his subordinate about their supply of deception bracelets, which are rare artifacts capable of masking a user's power level to bypass rift security. The shadowy head orders his men to use every bracelet they have to infiltrate the site and wipe out the students, eager to see the look on his rival's face. To him, the prospect of a massacre is just another game, and he prepares to burn his most valuable tools just for the fun of watching the young prodigies fall. Zeke prepares to leave his group behind to clear the rift, but first he must decide on their specialized training schedules. He tells Rick and Marin they are heading right back to the basics of physical conditioning to ensure they build a properly solid foundation. For Raymond, our boy brings out high-level regeneration stones that are designed to reflect any impact they receive straight back at the attacker. These rocks are usually impossible to crack without the use of source power, which makes them the ultimate tools for testing a student's true limits. Zeke prepares to strike the stone using nothing but his raw physical strength to demonstrate exactly how one should handle the resulting massive recoil. The impact creates a violent shockwave that rattles the air as the stone sends the concentrated force straight back into the hero's arm. He uses a small shield to absorb the blow, explaining that Raymond needs to learn the vital skill of deflecting overwhelming force to survive. Next is Celine, who is instructed to repeatedly thrust her blade at a single precise point on the stone without allowing her aim to waver. She struggles to maintain her precision, so our guy explains that she must value every single strike instead of just relying on her speed. After seeing him effortlessly pierce the mark, she realizes she has a very long way to go before she can truly master her sword style. Finally, the kid turns to Rangus and presents the spearman with a simple white feather to be used for his own specialized focus training. He shocks everyone by manifesting a wind aura he copied during his previous fight, using it to keep the delicate feather floating in the air. The goal of this drill is for Rangus to surrender himself to the flow of the air rather than trying to seize or control it. If he can master this difficult and delicate balance, he will eventually gain the ability to create his own momentum on the chaotic battlefield. Before they can continue, Laika calls out that the transport is finally ready, so Zeke hands over the specialized equipment to his teammates. The students are left standing in the courtyard feeling completely outclassed by the impossible tasks their mentor has set for them to complete. Zeke joins up with Laika, who is eager to introduce him to the elite high-level strike team they have assembled for the upcoming Rift mission. The group consists of the very best 3-star fighters from the Academy, though many of them remain skeptical of our boy's lower ranking. With everything in place and the preparations finished, the specialized unit finally sets off for the dangerous special rift to secure the magic water. Back at the main estate, Balza receives word that their rivals have already caught wind of the rift's location much sooner than anyone expected. The family head questions whether a single 2-star student is actually enough to handle the potential interference from their enemies during the mission. His aide argues that Zeke's ranking is completely meaningless, as his actual combat prowess already defies all conventional logic and star-level measurements. He notes that stars don't always equal actual strength, especially after witnessing the boy's impossible mastery of the family's most guarded secret techniques. Balza is left stunned because the Dragon Destruction combat arts are only supposed to be passed down through the family heads in total secrecy. Having watched the style practiced his entire life, the commander is certain that the boy's skills might even surpass his own current level of mastery. It seems impossible, as a deep background check performed years ago revealed absolutely no traces of the kid ever receiving any formal training. Balza begins to suspect the unthinkable, that his son is actually a reincarnation of the family's legendary first patriarch from 1,000 years ago. Lord Balza Eldragon sits in his office, dismissing the idea of his son being a reincarnation as absolute nonsense. His aide stands nearby, nervously watching as the head of the family continues to ruminate on the boy's strange power. He mocks the suggestion of a reborn master, believing that a true legend wouldn't struggle with minor political threats. He claims that if Zeke truly possessed such mythical strength, the Kerberos family wouldn't even be worth his attention. 1 week later, the scene shifts to the edge of a dense forest where the special rift is located. Instructor Freya stands guard at the perimeter, frustrated that the promised reinforcements haven't arrived to assist her squad yet. The sound of heavy footsteps through the grass draws her attention as the elite strike team finally reaches the site. The blonde swordswoman is surprised to see their teacher personally out in the field on active guard duty. Freya clarifies that she isn't acting as an instructor today, but as a formal guardian of the special domain. Beyond her stands a forest that has been physically warped and altered by the rift's leaking energy. The trees have turned an unnatural pitch black, radiating an unsettling power that chills those who look upon them. Zeke recognizes this energy immediately, realizing it matches the dark mist he saw radiating from the monsters during his earlier hunts. Our hero asks why a high-ranking officer like her is stuck guarding the perimeter instead of leading from the front. Freya explains that her mission is to keep the Kerberos family in check and prevent them from interfering with the domain. Aside from rivals, the guards must also deal with chaos monsters that are occasionally spat out of the distorted zone. This particular rift is protected by a barrier that only allows 7 fighters of the 3-star rank inside. The North Hall genius listens intently, knowing the mission is far more dangerous than a simple training exercise. To demonstrate the rules, Freya touches the invisible wall and is immediately repelled by a violent burst of energy. The barrier is absolute, preventing anyone who doesn't meet the specific star rank requirements from even setting foot inside. Furthermore, entry into the rift itself is strictly first served until the domain is cleared or the group is wiped out. While the others listen to the rules, Zeke wonders if he could simply shatter the entire barrier with pure physical force. Freya catches him daydreaming and snaps at him to pay attention to the mission briefing instead of ignoring her. Since the rival family could appear at any moment, she urges the team to enter the forest without further delay. The group confirms they are ready, looking focused and determined despite the obvious tension between the different halls. They step through the shimmering wall of light, officially beginning their investigation into the mysterious cracks in space. Once inside, Vanille practices with the weapon Zeke gave him, while his lackeys watch and praise his natural talent. Edgis watches from the distance, trying to figure out why Zeke forced his rival to use such a strange weapon. Our hero pulls out a wooden staff, acting as a substitute for the unconventional style he wants to teach. Zeke reminds Vanille of his promise to train him, and he intends to fulfill that debt during this dangerous mission. He demands that Vanille uses nothing but the staff for every monster encounter they face inside the rift. Vanille is understandably outraged at the idea of using an unfamiliar weapon on such a critical mission. But Zeke doesn't budge, insisting that there is no better way to learn than through the pressure of real combat. The boy is even more confused when he notices Zeke is radiating a familiar wind-type energy that mimics his own. Despite the protests and confusion, our guy simply tells him to shut up and get to work immediately. He explains that while they don't have any umbrellas, the staff functions similarly enough for him to learn the basics. Vanille continues to complain, claiming he doesn't know the first thing about fighting with a simple stick. Zeke reassures the grumpy kid that he has designed a custom combat style specifically tailored for his unique wind aura. He proudly names it the Ghost Wind Umbrella style, shocking everyone with his ability to just invent martial arts. Edgis observes the movements, realizing that the new style actually meshes perfectly with Vanille's natural energy. The purple-haired girl joins in the confusion, asking if the young master really created a new art out of nowhere. Zeke gives a nonchalant response, leaving the others wondering just what kind of monster they are dealing with. He turns his attention to Lila, who is still staring at him as if he's some kind of mythical creature. She presses him for more details on the creation process, but Zeke just confirms that the style is his invention. When asked how such a feat is possible, he gives his trademark answer that he can do it because he's him. Sandy calls the whole thing impossible, refusing to believe a child could invent a functional combat style from scratch. Laika just sighs and looks away, having long since accepted our hero's ridiculous logic as a normal part of life. Edgis takes another shot at Vanille, mocking the boy for needing a brand new style just to stay relevant. The argument spreads as Marin snaps at Sandy for her constant rude attitude toward their hall's representative. Sandy fires back immediately, telling the attendant to keep her master under control if she's so worried about manners. Raymond tries to play the peacemaker, reminding everyone that they are all on the same team for this mission. But Sandy refuses to cooperate, still harboring deep resentment for the guys who poisoned Laika during the selection matches. Edgis asks Leela if she's really comfortable working with someone as shady and underhanded as Vanille. Leela admits she isn't bothered, as joining this mission is a huge opportunity that outweighs any personal grudges. Laika steps in to clarify that while she doesn't like the past, Vanille's strength is a tactical necessity for success. The poison user smirks, noting that at least their leader has the wisdom to recognize his true value. Watching the bickering, Zeke begins to doubt if this was actually the right group of people to bring along. The shadows of their past rivalries are still casting a heavy cloud over the team's morale and coordination. He knows they won't survive the rift unless they learn to accept each other and trust their comrades. Suddenly, the group arrives at the heart of the domain, and sees the rift shimmering like massive cracks in space. Laika warns everyone to stay sharp, as nobody knows what kind of horrors are waiting on the other side. The team stands ready at the precipice, bracing themselves for whatever secrets the distortion might hold. Our guy leads the way, eager to see what kind of training opportunities this new rift has to offer. But as he steps closer to the portal, he stops and looks back as if he sensed a strange presence. He eventually shakes the feeling off and tells the rest of the group to hurry up and enter. The group plummets through the shimmering, fractured atmosphere of the newly opened rift, as reality itself seems to tear apart and swirl violently all around them. Ed just shouts at everyone to keep their heads and prepare for the worst, while the protagonist remains unnervingly calm and collected during the chaotic freefall. Suddenly, a massive shadow looms over the descending students, and a giant bird swoops in to snatch our boy right out of the sky with its sharp talons. Laika screams out in total shock as she watches her friend being carried away into the distance, but Vanille knows they have a more immediate problem approaching. The toxic fighter calls out to his associate, Alan, demanding they combine their expertise and use wind magic to save the team from what would be a lethal impact. Working together in perfect sync, the two manifest a series of swirling air currents that form a powerful protective cushion to slow the momentum of the falling students. The entire group slams into the dense forest floor below, with the wind wall barely managing to absorb the worst of the impact as they tumble through the dirt. Sandy immediately begins complaining about the rough landing and her aching body, but the others are just relieved to have survived such a terrifying drop into the unknown. Surveying the alien landscape of the rift, Edgis notes the strange towering vegetation and sternly orders everyone to consume their high-grade healing potions without any delay. Laika offers a rare and sincere word of thanks to the Westhall pair for saving them, though Vanille dismisses the gratitude as a mere necessity for the mission. Leela asks if they should go after their missing companion right away, but Vanille is quick to claim they should just leave the troublesome boy to his own fate. Edgis agrees that worrying about our guy is a complete waste of energy, knowing full well that the kid is far more capable and resilient than he looks. Even Laika admits that while they might be in serious danger, her friend is likely treating this entire life-threatening situation like nothing more than an interesting game. Sandy watches her teammates in disbelief, wondering why they speak about the child as if he is some kind of unstoppable monster who needs no help at all. The group realizes they are effectively lost in the vast, dense woods, struggling to find any identifiable landmark that might help them guide their path through the rift. However, Lila mentions seeing a mysterious distant pillar of light during their fall, a crucial detail that most of the other students completely missed in their frantic panic. She points out the exact direction with absolute confidence, demonstrating a level of focus and mental clarity that surprises even the most experienced and talented fighters in the group. Deciding to trust her keen observation, Laika moves the team toward the light, certain that our boy will eventually find his way there to reunite with them. High above the canopy, the reincarnated martial god finds the experience fascinating, as he has never encountered a creature that could naturally traverse across different dimensions like this. He doesn't seem the least bit bothered by being separated, trusting that his friends have grown strong enough under his tutelage to handle whatever the forest throws at them. The unexpected sky trip finally comes to an end as the massive bird carries its human prize toward a collection of jagged, desolate mountain peaks in the distance. Zeke is dropped unceremoniously into a giant nest where 3 starving chicks await, their wide mouths begging for a meal as they look toward their new visitor. After being snatched from the sky, Zeke finds himself dropped into a massive nest, having narrowly avoided becoming a snack for the local wildlife. He surveys the jagged landscape of this dimensional rift and realizes that the chirping chicks surrounding him aren't the monsters he was warned about. They actually seem quite peaceful. However, the parent bird is in terrible condition, covered in wounds, and looking far too exhausted to defend its home, or its offspring, from any outside threat. Our boy has sensed something trailing them for a while now, and the source of that unease finally reveals itself as a swarm of insectoid predators closes in. He identifies these creatures as chaos monsters, noting that even the smallest locusts possess the strength of a 3-star warrior. The skinny parent bird is clearly no match for them, leaving Zeke to decide whether he should flee or intervene in the coming slaughter. Seeing the bird's desperate resolve to protect its nest, Zeke is impressed and decides to lend a hand, stepping forward to face the swarm himself. The killing intent from the chaos insects is thick enough to sting the skin, as they are driven purely by an instinct to devour everything in their path. As the massive lead insect lunges forward, Zeke stands his ground with absolute confidence, while the injured bird chirps in terror behind him. He unleashes a wave of overwhelming pressure that instantly shatters the predator's fighting spirit, forcing the entire swarm to retreat in absolute fear. Despite the easy victory, our guy finds that exerting such immense mental force is a bit draining while his current body is still developing. With the threat gone, he turns his attention back to the nest and offers the remains of the insects to the starving chicks, who eagerly accept the meal. He deduces that the parent bird must have been ambushed while hunting for its family, barely managing to flee back to the nest despite its heavy wounds. Zeke decides that their encounter is more than mere coincidence and resolves to change the creature's fate by teaching it how to properly hunt its enemies. He vows to whip the parent bird into shape so that it and its offspring will never have to worry about food or predators again. Meanwhile, the perspective shifts as the rival Kerberos family makes their move, entering the rift from a separate point high in the sky. The leader of the group prepares his men for the mission ahead, fully intending to hunt down the Eldragon heirs while they are isolated inside the domain. The group has spent an entire week trapped in the mixed realm, fighting off endless waves of mutated bugs while trying to find their way out. Sandy screams in pure frustration as Aegis tells her to stop complaining and focus on swinging her weapon at the monsters instead of yelling. Rangus is reaching his limit after days of non-stop combat, while Alan still manages to keep a cheeky smile on his face despite the exhaustion. Laika steps forward and unleashes her lightning sword arts, incinerating the remaining monster swarms in a single blinding net of crackling electricity. She finally manages to catch her breath and checks on her team, hoping that everyone is still in one piece after the brutal slaughter. Sandy snaps back that she's clearly not alright and demands to know if every rift is as disgusting as the one they're in now. Rangus tells her that she just got unlucky with this specific terrain, while the blonde girl tries to regain her composure for the mission. Aegis notices a sudden shift in the air and realizes that the exit to the monster-infested forest is right in front of them. He warns her not to get too close while covered in disgusting monster guts, but Sandy is just happy the ordeal is almost over. The team rushes through the last of the woods and feels a massive wave of relief as they finally spot the bright light of the exit. They finally break out into the clearing and shout their farewells to the disgusting bugs that have been hunting them for the past week. However, the rocky landscape ahead doesn't look very welcoming, and Rangus notes that this place will likely bring a whole new set of headaches. Leela spots the massive pillar of light that they saw while falling, and the group realizes they are closing in on their actual goal. Aegis confirms that the shimmering pillar is coming directly from the Chaos Stone they were briefed on before they departed the Eldragon estate. Back at the academy, Teach explained that simply finding the magic water wasn't enough to consider this special operation a success. They have to destroy the core stone that caused the rift in the first place if they want to close the dimensional tier for good. These stones are the root of all the trouble, releasing massive amounts of energy to keep the rift open and stable. That energy devours the local ecosystem and twists every living creature in the realm into a mindless chaos beast driven by a single instinct. These monsters will slaughter and devour everything in their own world before eventually crossing through the rift to begin invading the human side. It sounds like a massive pain, but Rangus knows that high-quality magic water always forms very close to the location of these stones. The stones look wildly different in every rift, but they all share the same trait of emitting an overwhelming and vile amount of energy. Teach told them they would know it instantly when they got close, and Aegis is ready to head straight for the source of that power. Sandy is annoyed by the boy's serious attitude, while Rangus hopes that Zeke has already managed to find his way to the center of the rift. Laika stares at the horizon with concern for her friend, but Aegis tells her to just keep moving so they can finish the mission. They are just glad to be away from the bugs, though they know powerful chaos creatures are usually twisted by the stone's power. Laika tells everyone to stay sharp as they approach the center of the domain, but they somehow reach the stone without a single incident. Before them stands the massive chaos stone, but they are confused by the total lack of resistance and the eerie silence of the area. Laika suddenly senses something and tells the team to look up, where they spot a figure standing right at the edge of the stone. Our boy greets them with a casual wave and a smile, as if he hadn't just vanished into the rift a whole week ago. Laika is thrilled to see that he's okay, while the hero notes with a grin that she still seems to be quite lively. Sandy snaps that they are actually wrecked, while Lila notices a pile of strange shapes lying on the ground further in. Zeke casually mentions that he ran into some trouble earlier, pointing to the powerful chaos beast he already slaughtered and left in the dirt. He admits he might have dealt with a few other monsters on the way here, leaving Sandy absolutely speechless at his sheer power. Zeke confirms that the rock is indeed a chaos stone and shows them that he was simply waiting here for his team to arrive. He points to a shimmering pool of liquid at the base of the rock and identifies it as the magic water they came for. Aegis tells them to hurry up and collect the resource, but Rangus notes that this clear liquid is a very strange color. Even Sandy admits it looks odd for magic water, but Bro's instincts flare up before they can even think about investigating the mystery. Before anyone can react, Bro grabs Laika and lunges to the side to avoid a massive beam of energy that nearly vaporizes them. A mysterious figure in a suit steps out of the shadows and mocks them, calling the young martial artists nothing more than little lizards. A group of assassins has finally surrounded them, but Bro reveals with a smirk that he was already expecting them to show up. Zeke doesn't seem the least bit worried, even though a group of mysterious men in suits has suddenly blocked their path forward. Rangus is paralyzed with fear as he stares at the intruders, quickly deducing that these dangerous figures must be the elite assassins from the rival Kerberos family. The students are left in utter disbelief since the rift was supposed to have a strict limit, allowing only those under the 3-star rank to enter. The leader of the assassins senses their confusion and offers to explain exactly how his squad managed to bypass the domain's entry barrier. He reveals their secret weapon called deception bracelets, specialized artifacts that trick the domain into ignoring the usual rank restrictions. Vineil can hardly believe such a powerful device exists, while the other assassins mock their leader for carelessly giving away their tactical secrets. But the leader doesn't care about their identity, stating that the students won't live long enough for the information to matter. He coldly declares that every single person in their strike team is going to die right here in the rift today. Without another second of hesitation, the mage launches a massive rock cannon technique directly at the group. Laika screams for Zeke as he takes the full force of the blast, but she barely has time to breathe before the next rock comes flying her way. Vineil surprises everyone by jumping in to shield the others, prompting a shocked reaction from the lightning swordswoman who didn't expect him to be so helpful. He tells her to pay attention instead of spacing out before unleashing his own wind aura to blast the incoming debris away. The battlefield quickly descends into complete chaos as the students try to group up and survive the superior firepower of their enemies. Another rock bullet technique rains down from the sky with lethal accuracy, forcing everyone to scramble for cover behind the jagged rocks. Ranges and the rest of the team struggle to keep their footing as the ground itself becomes a weapon controlled by the assassins. Laika tries to regain her composure, but the pressure from the assassins is unlike anything they have ever faced in their training academy. Edgis warns the group that they need to meet the threat head-on, or they will be systematically picked off one by one in the dark. Once the dust finally settles, Rangus realizes with horror that they have been separated from one another, just as the Kerberos mages intended. He attempts to stall for time, asking the assassins if they really came all this way just to secure the rare magic water. The subordinate mage remains completely silent, looking down on the students as if they aren't even worth the breath to answer. He prepares another heavy strike, leaving Rangus to grit his teeth in frustration at the massive power gap between them. Laika realizes that thinking about Zeke right now is a dangerous distraction she can't afford if she wants to stay alive. She senses their raw aura and confirms her worst fears. These elite assassins are all at the formidable 4-star level. This rank represents a wall that normal people can never climb, separating simple hard work from those born with true martial talent. The gap between 3 stars and 4 stars is an absolute abyss that mere sword technique alone can't hope to bridge. Even more terrifying is the leader standing in the back, who radiates the heavy and crushing energy of a 5-star master. If that man decides to move against them, the entire student group will be wiped out in a single instant. As if the physical difference wasn't enough, the group finally realizes they are facing high-level mages specializing in earth manipulation. The subordinate assassin uses earth magic to perform a high-level summoning, pulling a terrifying beast from another dimension into the rift. A massive 3-star wolf monster appears in a burst of purple energy, ready to rip through anyone still left standing. For the first time since the mission began, Rangus begins to feel like their current situation is truly hopeless. The assassins assume the battle is already over, fully expecting the children to crumble under the sheer weight of their magic. But the thick smoke clears to reveal Zeke standing perfectly tall, looking remarkably bored by the entire magical display. He sighs in disappointment, telling the mage that he was actually looking forward to seeing what real magic was capable of. Zeke looks the mage in the eye and asks if that underwhelming rock show was really the best they could offer him. Laika is incredibly relieved to see him unharmed, though Zeke treats the lethal situation as if it's just another training session. Our boy begins to focus his energy and stretch his muscles, ignoring the giant wolf and the mages entirely. With a powerful grunt, Zeke catches a massive falling boulder before it can crush him, leaving the lead assassin completely speechless. He notes that if this battle is just about throwing heavy rocks around, then he is more than happy to play. Zeke gives the mage a terrifying grin, warning the assassin that even he knows how to handle a game this simple. The Kerberos assassin isn't impressed by the boy's durability and quickly performs a summoning ritual to bring forth a massive purple-eyed spectral wolf to end the fight. Our boy is genuinely excited by the display, marveling at the magic that allows someone to call monsters into existence. His enemy remains baffled by his carefree attitude. The mage demands to know if the kid truly understands how hopelessly outmatched he is. Zeke calmly strokes his chin and weighs their current disadvantage. He admits that things look a little unfavorable for the group at the moment, but he quickly adds that their situation is about to change. A sudden, thunderous tremor shakes the entire area, leaving the assassin stunned as a massive shadow begins to loom over the battlefield from high above. Descending with a powerful gust of wind, a giant bird crashes into the ground, signaling the arrival of the kid's unexpected disciples. Laika and her companions stare in absolute disbelief as the massive bird makes its presence known, towering over the battlefield, like a mountain of golden fluff. The mage is left speechless by the sudden appearance of the rift's native creatures, while Zeke simply welcomes his friends back at the perfect time. He greets the giant creature like an old friend, patting its chest while checking to see if it managed to get a full meal before joining the fight. To his friend's absolute confusion, our boy explains that these massive birds are his disciples. He looked after them while he was separated from the group. He recalls the brutal physical training he put them through during his time alone. He forced the young creatures to pick up their pace and endure heavy hits. Looking at the robust bird now, he's clearly satisfied with its growth. His companions are still struggling to process the idea of a bird being a trained martial arts disciple. Without wasting another second, the kid suggests some post-meal exercise and commands his feathered students to take care of the summoned wolves for him. The rest of the bird family joins the fray, with the giant chicks chirping excitedly as they prepare to tear into the enemy's magical summons. The fluffy disciples dive into action with surprising speed, their trained bodies making them more than a match for the mage's spectral beasts. Zeke smirks confidently at the assassin, pointing out that with his disciples on the field, the odds have finally been leveled in the student's favor. The mage refuses to be intimidated by a few overgrown birds and draws his shimmering blade, determined to cut through any obstacle standing in his path. Vineal snaps at Laika to keep her eyes on the fight. He reminds her they can't win while she's worrying about Zeke instead of her own opponent. Realizing his teammate is correct, the lightning swordswoman steals her resolve and prepares to take down the Kerberos subordinate with everything she has left. The assassin taunts them further, warning that their friend will die if they don't hurry, but the girl is confident she can finish the job first. He lunges forward with a powerful landslide slash, but his opponents are no longer the same unrefined and helpless children they were when they first entered the academy. The massive impact sends shockwaves through the rift as lightning and wind clash violently against the sheer weight of the mage's earth-based sword style. Vineal seizes the sudden opening, unleashing his new ghost wind umbrella technique to pierce through the enemy's defenses with a concentrated blast of air. Following up on the opening her teammate created, Laika strikes immediately with a blinding lightning flash of her thunder greatsword, catching the mage off guard. The mage is forced back, battered by the combination of long-range wind and close-range lightning strikes. He manages to stay on his feet despite the damage. Even though their combined assault barely managed to scratch him, Vineal and Laika aren't discouraged by the man's unnatural toughness or his resilient magic. The girl remains completely confident, declaring that they can definitely beat him as long as they continue to work together and support one another. With their teamwork finally clicking into place, the two students stand ready to face the 4-star assassin and end this mission with a victory. Edgis leaps forward with his blade held high, determined to prove that his star rating doesn't define his true potential during this deadly life-or-death battle against a superior foe. The Kerberos mage counters with a volley of rock bullets, but Lila steps in to protect her teammate. She shatters the incoming earth magic using the focused sound shockwaves of her staff arts. The sheer force of the sound vibrates through the entire arena as the dust and debris from the rock bullets are blown away by the shockwave. Realizing his projectile magic has failed, the assassin hides behind a massive wall of stone to buy time before launching into his own specialized set of sword techniques. The 4-star fighter leaps into the air and brings down a crushing earth-based sword strike that sends a landslide of energy surging toward the two students on the ground. Edgis meets the heavy blow with his own thousand-blade style, manifesting a brilliant flash of light that cuts right through the magical pressure to keep them from being crushed. The assassin begins to realize that these low-level brats are far more skilled than they look, but he refuses to believe a group of children could actually pose a threat. Leela spins her staff in a wide arc to create a rolling wave of energy, hoping to catch the mage off guard. However, the veteran fighter predicts her movement and prepares a counter. Suddenly, the ground beneath Lila's feet erupts in a specialized earth-binding trap that pins her in place before she can finish her technique. Edgis screams out in concern as his teammate is completely immobilized, leaving her wide open for the assassin to finish the job with a single decisive stroke. Instead of retreating to safety, Edgis throws himself into the line of fire and takes the full brunt of the mage's next landslide slash to keep Lila from being hit. The heavy impact nearly breaks his guard, and the young genius realizes that he won't be able to keep blocking such high-level attacks for much longer. The mage laughs and mocks his persistence, summoning a forest of sharp stone needles from the earth to finish off the exhausted boy who can barely hold up his sword. But the kid refuses to stay down, weaving through the stone spikes with incredible speed. He clashes his sword against the assassin's magically reinforced blade over and over, refusing to break. Both sides pull back for a moment to catch their breath, with Edgis acknowledging that their opponent is truly as strong as his star ranking suggests. He carefully analyzes the assassin's aura and notices that the magical reinforcement on the man's sword seems to fluctuate every time he attempts to cast a spell. Edgis signals to Lila that he's found a weakness they can exploit. He promises her that they can actually win this fight if she can provide just one more opening. They notice that the assassin's sword goes back to being a normal weapon whenever he uses magic. This creates a momentary gap in his defenses for Edgis to strike with full force. The Kerberos mage taunts them for having a strategy session in the middle of a battle, completely unaware that the children have already figured out his biggest flaw. Edgis just smiles and tells the 4-star trash that he's finally figured out exactly how to take him down and end this fight right now. Furious at the boy's confidence, the mage unleashes his full power, screaming for the brats to disappear as he swings his earthbound blade in a wide lethal arc. Leela activates her staff arts one last time, sending out a pulse of energy that disrupts the mage's balance right as he attempts to switch from casting to striking. The assassin's eyes widen as he misses his mark, and Edgis charges through the opening. He sees the path of victory as clearly as a winning move on a chessboard. He unleashes the 5-edge ultimate blade, a devastating technique that carves through the mage's armor and leaves the veteran assassin gasping in disbelief before he finally collapses. Aegis drops to one knee as the adrenaline fades, and Leela rushes to his side to check on him. Her eyes are full of relief that they managed to survive. He explains that her observation was the key to everything. The gap between the mage's magic and sword arts provided the only chance a 3-star had to win. With the first assassin dealt with, the young genius turns his attention to the other fight happening nearby, wondering if the others are having just as much trouble. Nearby, Sandy and Alan are facing off against the second mage, but their battle is a chaotic mess compared to the precision shown by Aegis and Lila. Their lightning and wind attacks keep clashing against each other, creating massive explosions that nearly hit the wrong targets. Neither of them is willing to let the other lead. Sandy starts screaming at Alan for almost dragging her into his blast. The green-haired boy simply sighs and tells her it's her fault for being too slow. The second assassin finds their lack of synergy hilarious. He mocks them for bickering like children, while he prepares to bury them both under a barrage of stone spikes. The two students are forced to put up a combined wall of wind and lightning just to survive the next assault, though they still haven't stopped arguing. Alan complains that Sandy is getting in the way of his gale bullets, while she counters that he's the one interfering with her lightning great sword techniques. Another wave of stone spikes erupts from the ground, and Alan is forced to use his fan to shield Sandy right as she loses focus on the enemy's movements. The Kerberos subordinate laughs and asks them if they really thought such half-baked teamwork could ever defeat a 4-star mage like himself in a real battle. Alan admits that their teamwork is indeed rough around the edges, but he tells the mage that they don't need a lecture from someone about to lose. He notices that this 4-star is actually on the weak side for his rank, and Sandy agrees that they still have more than enough power to win. The mage prepares his final strike, but Sandy steps forward and tells Alan to just support her. They finally decide to put their differences aside for a coordinated strike. Alan grumbles about being relegated to a supporting role, but he still unleashes his wind-rending fan arts. He creates a massive vortex that surrounds the assassin with air. The assassin thinks he can just withstand the wind aura, but Alan overloads the vortex with extra energy. He pins the man to the spot so he can't dodge Sandy. Sandy smiles and tells the green-haired boy that his setup was more than enough as she charges forward with her greatsword crackling with intense lightning power. She unleashes a massive typhoon strike that sends the assassin flying into the air, screaming in agony as the combined force of wind and lightning tears through him. The second mage hits the ground hard and stops moving, leaving the two students standing victorious amidst the wreckage as the dust finally settles across the arena. Alan immediately goes back to complaining, telling Sandy that she always leaves things half done. He insists that he deserves all the credit for providing the perfect setup. Sandy just huffs and tells him she heard that, continuing their endless bickering even though they managed to survive a battle against a superior 4-star opponent.